Chapter 1152. The appearance of Wu Chen and Jingle Chunshui immediately pushed the atmosphere of the scene to another climax. They all looked at the two people unexpectedly. You should have died a few years ago, right? Why are you still alive? Eisen, who was the first to recover, was shocked. He forced himself to suppress the horror in his heart. He saw Jin kill Dustless with his own eyes, and now he suddenly came back from the dead. How could he not be shocked? Sosuke Eisen wasn't the only one who was shocked, the other captains were the same. They were very familiar with this face that they wanted to forget but could never forget. It was almost imprinted in their hearts. So. The captains who were fighting against the Great Void Masters all landed beside Shunshui and said with an unfriendly expression, "Captain Shunshui, why did you release this evil man? Do you think that Soul Society is not chaotic enough and want to speed up its destruction?" Hearing this, without waiting for Shunsui to answer, Dustless turned his head and said. Even if he couldn't see, he knew that this person was Soi Fan through his observation haki. Makes sense. Kuchiki Byakuya nodded. Captain Rukia, Hinamori, and Matsumoto all had complicated expressions. If it wasn't for Dustless, they might still be wandering in the Shinkai Academy and be regarded as their teacher. Sensing the high Ryatsu level of the three, Dustless smiled and said softly, "So it's you three. Long time no see, it seems that you have improved a lot. Everyone, I can understand your dissatisfaction and resentment, and I will naturally be willing to be punished in the future. However, Soul Society is now in an unprecedented crisis, and I will naturally be punished if I can survive this. But, speaking up to here, Shunsui looked at the great void in the sky and felt extremely melancholy. Jillian, who was still walking out of the black cavity, felt his heart fall to the bottom. Shunsui looked at Dustless and said, "Using evil to fight evil, I don't think there's anything wrong with that." "Ah. You are really cunning. You want to use me as a tool to deal with Eisen? At the very least, you have to remove the seal on my body. Otherwise, I can only passively take a beating, and all of you death gods might be annihilated." His words were full of threats, implying that he would not work until the seal was broken. No, I'm firmly against it. If the seal was broken, who would be able to control him? Don't forget the dangers of the past. The captain of the 10th Division, Toshiro Hifani, said in a mature tone, not like a child at all. You're right. Hearing this, Jingle Chunshui nodded. This worry was not unreasonable. It was hard to tell what a person was thinking. If Dustless took the opportunity to betray them, Soul Society, which was gradually losing, would not be able to contemplate the consequences. Then release the seal on his eyes. Shuansue's eyes shone brightly as he said resolutely, "Even if we die, we have no choice. It's best to use his power to fight Sosuke Eisen." All the captains were silent. Although they felt very uncomfortable in their hearts, they knew that this was an undeniable fact. They could only walk this path to the end. Even if they knew that hell was ahead, they could only press forward. It's good that you can understand. Shuansue's dry mouth revealed a faint smile. Silence meant agreement. Immediately, he reached out and grabbed the black bandage next to Dustless's eyes. Humph. Don't even think about letting him go. Do you think we don't exist? The demonic voice fell. Dongsengyu's Zanpakuto swept towards them, temporarily forcing the captains to retreat. Only Dustless was left alone and bound in place. He. A chilling laughter came out from Dustless's throat. Looking closely, the black bandage that sealed his left eye had been torn off by Shunsui. The purple eye was exposed to the air. Bastard. Dongsengyu was furious. His Zanpakuto was surrounded by cold murderous intent. He raised his Zanpakuto and slashed towards Dustless's head. Naive. The Ryatsu and chakra in Wu Chen's body were released. Even if his four limbs were still sealed, a mere East Sage would not be able to hurt him. Heido 96, the silent Ryatsu went berserk, and the fermented ground turned red. It was very hot. A huge flame in the shape of a sword was printed on the scorched ground. This is, Dongsengyu's Zanpakuto suddenly stopped. He looked at the ground under his feet in horror. He remembered that the captain almost killed Aizen Sosuke with the forbidden Hado Hado. He quickly retreated. Everyone, leave quickly. This is cremation with sword. Shuansue's pupils shrank as he quickly shouted. At the same time, he also quickly retreated. He looked at Dustless with his eyes wide open and called him a madman. In order to break the seal, he chose to use Hado 96 to attack him. Cremation with sword. The blue sky turned dark red again, and the ravaged quiet soul courtyard cracked open again. The power of this move was beyond imagination. The moment the fire broke through the ground, all life, no matter if it was a Shinigami or a Daimoku, were forced to retreat by the destructive temperature. Including Aizen Sosuke. Boom boom boom. The dark red magma sword exploded, and the aftermath shattered the Daimoku who did not have time to escape, including the black space that connected Soul Society and Hueco Mundo. In front of cremation with sword, nothing was worth mentioning. It was as fragile as paper. In the distance, Aizen Sosuke's face turned black as he clenched his fists. He felt an unprecedented humiliation. Just now, he actually ran away. His old face turned red, and his body stopped responding in the blink of an eye. What the hell is this thing made of? It's so hard. It was hit by cremation with sword, but it was not damaged at all. Dustless's whisper came from the fire pillar that connected heaven and earth. Chapter 1153. Whether it was the Great Void or the Shinigami, they were all stunned. The flames from the fire pillar almost made them collapse. They felt like they were walking in magma hundreds of meters away. And Dustless, who was in the center zone, actually did not even have the slightest reaction. His entire person was calm and collected, without the slightest injury. The desolate tone just now was clearly complaining that the power of cremation was too weak and that it couldn't destroy the various sealing items that bound him. You bastard. Tozai Isami's murderous intent locked onto Dustless, who was bathing in the fire pillar. He felt like his heart was being cut into pieces. Don't worry about these Shinigami. Attack that sealed man with all your strength. Looking around at the great void, Aizen ordered coldly. He pointed his spear at Dustless. Most of the captains had seen his Kyoka Suigetsu, so it was easy to deal with him. Only this monster was the most difficult to deal with. He had seen the release of Kyoka Suigetsu, but he wasn't affected at all. Ah! The Great Void Realm experts nodded one after another. They all used their strongest moves to attack Wu Chen. He sat on a special stone chair and was sealed to the point that he couldn't move. He was a natural living target. So. All kinds of void flashes filled the sky. The sky above Soul Society was dyed in different colors. All kinds of void flashes bombarded Dustless. Rukia, do we need to help him? Looking at the sealed Dustless, Kurosaki Ichigo's heart was bursting. He ignored the wound on his chest and said seriously, that guy called Aizen is very strong. He killed me with one strike. Shumu Rukia glanced at Shinozaki Ichigo and said, is that so? However, Captain Wuchen once killed Aizen Sosuke in one hit. Kurosaki Ichigo's mouth opened so wide that it could fit a fist. His head instantly exploded. If he could be killed by void flashes, Soul Society wouldn't have to spend so much effort to catch him. His combat power is higher than the entire Godai 13. Shunsui lowered his hat and said seriously. The captains lowered their heads and pondered. Although they were quite unhappy with Shuansue's words, they couldn't deny that it was true. What's this illuminating light? Dustless curled his lips in disdain. His left eye suddenly widened, and an overbearing aura rose into the sky. Golden ripples visible to the naked eye spread like waves. Haoshiku Haki swept across the entire sky above Soul Society. The incoming void flashes didn't touch Dustless and exploded in the air. Boom boom boom. A series of explosions were incessant, and all kinds of void flashes exploded one after another. In just a minute, the sky above Soul Society was filled with the aftermath of all kinds of void flashes and explosions, turning into a forbidden area. Only Dustless seemed to be unaffected, and the others all retreated. The group of Grim Reapers looked at Dustless, who was standing peacefully with a complicated expression. They felt very upset. The death of the head captain was as if the backbone of Soul Society was broken. All the captains had lost their faith and were at a loss. Looking at Dustless, they secretly sighed. The dignity of Soul Society needs a prisoner to defend it. It's ridiculous. Whoosh! Amidst the black smoke, an ear-piercing howl was heard. Looking up, a great void was dashing over at the speed of light. There was a shiny long gun in his hand. Ulquiorra? Only half of his eye was exposed, which was the reincarnation Sharingan. Dustless joked, worthy of being Aizen Sosuke's #1 loyal dog. Oh, no, the #1 loyal fan. Void's detection nerves and hearing were second to none. Dustless's words were clearly heard by Ulquiorra. His Ryatsu suddenly increased, and the Ryatsu in his hand shined brighter. Whoosh! His diving body suddenly stopped, and the long gun in his hand was thrown out forcefully. Thunder Spear. The tip of the spear flashed with lightning, and the sharp crackling sound was even more chilling. With Ulquiorra's anger, it smashed toward Dustless. Whether it was the #1 dog or the #1 fan, it deeply hurt Ulquiorra's self-esteem. Dustless's eyes were fixed on the falling spear, and an irregular black flame flashed in his eyes, Amaterasu. A black flame burned on the body of the Thunder Spear. In the blink of an eye, it swallowed the entire spear. When it was about to hit Dustless, it was swallowed up by Amaterasu. Ulquiorra opened his mouth, but he didn't say anything. I'll just defeat you all in one fell swoop. Dustless muttered to himself. His tone was as plain as eating and drinking. With your current state? Aizen raised his voice and mocked. Do you know how many Voiders are in Soul Society now? I can tell you clearly that this number is impossible to estimate. If I have to find an adjective, it would be thousands of Voiders. You can't do it, but it doesn't mean that others can't. Dustless glanced at them and whispered, Kai Bao of the King. The void behind Dustless splashed thousands of ripples, and then countless divine weapons came out from it. The sky behind Dustless was dyed golden by the massive number of weapons. 1,000, 10,000, tens of thousands. It was like a bottomless pit, and the number of weapons kept increasing. No one knew the exact number, but above the great voiders of Soul Society, there were hundreds of divine weapons floating above their heads. How many abilities does this guy have? Aizen was stunned, and his eyes were burning with jealousy. He looked at Dustless with jealousy. This guy seemed to be omnipotent, and there was no ability that he didn't know. Chapter 1154. All kinds of divine artifacts were scattered all over the sky of Soul Society. The sky was crushed, and there was almost no end to it. From afar, it looked like a large dark cloud. Bastard! Seeing this, Aizen Sok's hair dripped with sweat, and he finally lost his arrogant appearance. His eyes stared fixedly at Dustless, and he felt an unprecedented sense of defeat. This damned guy was sealed, and just one eye was enough to make him powerless. Die, all of you. A lazy voice fell, and the fate of countless greater voids was instantly decided. All kinds of divine weapons hovering in the void fell to the ground. Poochie. 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 Awoo! In half an hour, the sound of bodies being crushed and hysterical screams became the main theme of Soul Society, sweeping through the entire Soul Society. That horrifying howl almost caused their minds to collapse. How is this possible? What kind of ability does this guy have? Looking at the army of Hueco Mundo being crushed in an instant, the captains were shocked speechless, and their hearts almost jumped out of their chests. Dustless alone crushed Hueco Mundo. What kind of strength was this? It was a question whether the captain could do it. After all, he was old, and compared to the young and strong Dustless, he was much weaker. Moreover, the thing that was most impossible to overlook was that at this moment, Dustless was still sealed on the stone chair, and the strength he revealed now was far from his prime. This bastard! Aizen Sok's expression became uglier and uglier, and he held a blue pearl in his hand, the Hogyoku. The Hogyoku was forcibly taken away, but not only did his strength not weaken, he became stronger. Aizen Sok gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to break, and dense lines of blood appeared on his face. Ever since he met Dustless, his life of bad luck had begun. Now, the strength he obtained after hundreds of years of hard work was less than the tip of the iceberg. How could he accept this? He's too dangerous, we should seal his eyes as well. Sajin said, looking at the expressionless Dustless. He always felt that this guy was omnipotent, whether it was Genjutsu, Taijutsu, Kendo, Kido, or Bakudo. Dustless's absolute strength made them feel ashamed. You're right. We shouldn't have unsealed his eyes. I'm sure that he can defeat these invading greater voids without using his limbs or eyes. That Vasto Lord called Ulquiorra is a good example. This time, Shunsui agreed with Sajin. He thought it was no big deal to reveal one eye, but now it seems he was too naive. The Ryatsu in his body surged. Aizen's eyes focused on Dustless and his thumb pointed to the sky. Boom boom boom. It has to be said that Aizen's Ryatsu was incredibly powerful. Ajuchas, who was close to him, was forced to kneel on one knee. Even Stark and Ulquiorra's faces changed. Just by using spiritual pressure, they couldn't resist. The so-called Vasto Lord was like a baby in swaddling clothes in front of Sok Aizen, not worth mentioning. It's faintly, Sok Aizen began to chant, and every time he said a word, the sky would turn dark. This is a good opportunity. Staring at the fragments behind Ulquiorra and Stark, this distance was just enough for him to use that technique. Dustless's purple eyes widened, and he shouted, "Heavenly hand power." Together with the sealed special stone chair, it appeared behind Ulquiorra and Stark in a strange manner in an instant. Aizen-sama is powerful, he can suppress us with spiritual pressure alone. Ulquiorra's respectful eyes were full of admiration and fanaticism, and even stupidly loyal. In his eyes, Sosuke Aizen was already a god. Yes, Aizen-sama is the guiding light sent by God to guide Hueco Mundo. The Minos Voids who suffered from Hogyoku Arcana were grateful to Aizen's change of heart. Oh. Then I'm sorry, your god is about to fall. Hearing this, the Minos Voids turned around and stared blankly at Dustless floating in the void. They all felt that their worldview had collapsed, and their IQ was not enough. This guy was clearly sealed, and he was even dragging a huge stone chair. However, he moved without making a sound. It was as if he was teleporting through space, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. This was simply blatant cheating. Dustless glanced at Sok Aizen and whispered, "Hado 90, Black Coffin." Space and time distorted, revealing the cold and dark depths of the universe. Black demonic light drilled out and almost instantly sealed Sok Aizen. Puchi. 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 The sharp shadowless blade pierced through Aizen Sosuke's body, and even his bones were broken, making a crackling sound. Sok Aizen's body instantly hurt, and just like Dustless said, his body began to fall slowly, and he instantly lost the ability to fight. Aizen-sama. Sok Aizen's Arcana lackeys cried out and rushed towards Dustless with bloodshot eyes. These idiots have all been brainwashed. The so-called Vasto Lord's brain isn't that bright either. The group of Minos Voids who rushed towards Dustless, including Sok Aizen's confidant Ulquiorra, all pulled out their swords and coldly waved them at Dustless. This is a good opportunity, take this opportunity to capture them all. Seeing this, Shunsui Jingle hurriedly gave out orders, which was completely different from his usual sloppy self. Chapter 1155. Everyone knew the saying, take advantage of your weakness. Shunsui Kiraku, who was as cunning as an old fox, seized this rare opportunity to attack Sosuke Aizen. A bunch of idiots. Dustless roared as he saw the group of Minos Grande charging at him. Boundless repulsive force spread out in all directions. Super Shinra Tensei. The destructive impact landed, and all life forms within a few kilometers received a fatal blow. The powerful Minos Grande were directly crushed into powder, and their ashes were scattered across the entire Soul Society. So strong, he is indeed the most abnormal. Shinozaki Ichigo said enviously with a rare hint of respect in his tone. Shinozaki Ichigo's gaze shifted to Sosuke Aizen, who was instantly killed. Shinozaki Ichigo's heart was filled with respect. At first, he thought that Rukio was just making things up, but now it seemed that it was true. Sosuke Aizen could instantly kill him, but Dustless could instantly kill him. Killing a captain-level Shinigami with a snap of his fingers, such strength was beyond Shinozaki Ichigo's understanding. If this kid knew that I was the one who killed his parents, I wonder if he would still be like this. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked at Shinozaki Ichigo from the corner of his eyes. Black Void Flash. The black afterglow from hell came from the front. The giant beam was extremely powerful, and the captains and Minos Grande who were in the way sensed the power of the flash and avoided it. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The black light passed through many figures, and after a long journey, it finally locked onto Dustless. Just in time. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes flashed. Not only did he not resist, but he also used his willpower to control his body and collided with the black light head-on. Boom boom boom. The power of the black light hit Dustless, and the power was enough to instantly kill a captain. The surrounding space was distorted, but the special stone chair floating in the air and Dustless were not hurt at all. What the hell is this thing made of? It's so sturdy. Dustless lowered his head and looked at the black bandages all over his body. He was rather surprised. Leaving aside the fact that it was completely fine after being directly hit by one-strike cremation, now that it was hit by a black void flash, which was even more powerful than Wang Su's flash, it was still as good as new. It was not hard to tell how extraordinary the material used to construct this item was. Forget it, I'll let Team Zero's Sayaso Tongsen and Shidoro Senjimaru undo it for me. Head Captain Yamamoto died in battle, and it won't be long before they arrive at Soul Society. Dustless muttered to himself as he looked up at the sky. Your enemy is in front of you, not in the sky. It was Stark, the first of the 10 blades, who was pointing a gun at him. You want to challenge me? Come, don't hold back. Blast with all your might. It's best if you can destroy this damn thing used to seal me. Dustless puffed out his chest and motioned for Stark to aim. Stark's mouth twitched, and he pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang bang bang. A large number of void flashes blasted towards Dustless. Just like before, he floated in the sky motionlessly, looking forward to the incoming void flashes. Boom boom boom. Another series of explosions sounded. Dustless, who endured all the power of void flashes, was still unharmed. The black bandages on the surface of his skin were the best defensive armor. It could withstand any kind of attack. That's it for today. Our goal has been achieved. Retreat back to Hueco Mundo immediately. Stark was ready to use all his strength to teach Dustless a lesson, but Aizen Sosuke suddenly gave the order to retreat. The group of Minos Voids could only watch the broken Soul Society leave. Aizen Sosuke himself was extremely miserable. He felt pressure when he walked, and he needed both Higashi-sensei and Ikemara-jin to support him. He was also out of breath. Dustless also landed on the ground. He raised his head to observe the Minos Voids who were gradually escaping into the darkness. He was indifferent. Are you kidding me? Are we just going to watch them leave when Soul Society is destroyed like this? Seeing all the captains stop, the young Nissan Toshiro was unwilling to give up. I can understand your feelings, but we were almost wiped out when Soul Society had the advantage. If they chase us to Hueco Mundo, I'm afraid Aizen Sosuke won't need to do it himself. The waves of Minos Voids are enough to destroy us. Shunsuke sighed. He was also unwilling to give up. It doesn't matter if you chase them or not. Captain Shunsuke, please fulfill the agreement we made in Avicii Hell. After ensuring the safety of Soul Society, remove the seal on my body. Shunsuke's lazy words made all the captains look at him in disbelief. They didn't expect him to have such an agreement with Dustless. No, this guy is too dangerous. Sakura Seizen's eyes glowed with determination. He stood up and objected. Everyone, at this time, Two figures descended from the sky. The captains of Godai 13 drew their swords again. It was Fourfing Dojo's Ichi and Urahara Kisuk. Captain Urahara and Fourfing Dojo's captains were framed. Don't worry about your Zanpakuto. Seeing this scene, Shunsuke quickly explained. Aizen personally admitted that he framed Urahara Kisuk and the captains 110 years ago. The two of you really know how to choose the right time. Wuchen turned his face away and said coldly. According to the secret agreement between Dustless and Urahara Kisuk, the seal on his body should have been removed a long time ago. Who would have thought that he would delay until now? It was obviously intentional. Despicable, I was unknowingly tricked by him. I'm afraid Urahara Kisuk already guessed that Soul Society would be destroyed, so he deliberately delayed my release and pushed me and Soul Society into the same boat. Dustless rolled his eyes and understood Urahara Kisuk's intention. Chapter 1156. Urahara Kisuk had expected Dustless to say this, so he took out a fan and covered half of his face. My memory isn't very good, I'm forgetful, sorry. Urahara Kisuk scratched his head awkwardly with an innocent expression. Hearing this, Dustless was too lazy to argue with him. This kind of shameless person was the most shameless, there was no need to be angry with him. What's more, Dustless also got some real benefits, at least this guy will support him to be the head captain. And the most exciting thing was that Dustless took Yamamoto's Zanpakuto ability, Ryujin Jaka. Captain Jinglu, don't you want to sign the treaty? I can help you expel Sosuke Aizen, and I can also transform into Sosuke Aizen and take over Sosuke Aizen's unfinished work, destroying Soul Society. Dustless threatened in an unfriendly tone, at the same time releasing a bone-chilling spiritual pressure. Are you threatening us? Keiki Byakuya and the other captains frowned with murderous intent. This isn't threatening, it's urging. Ignoring their murderous intent, Dustless continued, there's no such thing as a free lunch. I advise you to think about the consequences of your actions. I'm the one who helped you resist Sosuke Aizen and turned the situation around. Sosuke Aizen will continue to attack Soul Society in the future. The head captain is dead, and more than 70% of Soul Society's Shinigami are dead. Other than cooperating with me, what else do you have to face Sosuke Aizen? The group of team leaders blushed and stared at Wuchen. They were choked and wanted to refute, but they couldn't refute. They had all seen Sosuke Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu. Once they fought, their chance of winning was zero. In addition, Sosuke Aizen controlled Hueco Mundo and could mobilize thousands of Minos Grande to attack Soul Society at any time. Just like just now, let alone voids like Vasto Lord and Ajuchas, even thousands of Jillians were enough to give Soul Society a headache. Even the lowest level Jillian would require a Shinigami with Shirkai to deal with. Everyone, with all due respect, the head captain is dead, and the dead can't be revived. We must choose a new head captain to deal with the crisis brought by Sosuke Aizen. With a strange luster in his eyes, Kisuk Urahara stared at Dustless and finally suggested, I recommend Dustless as the head captain. I strongly disagree. Me too. A prisoner as the head captain? What a disgrace. As soon as Urahara Kisuk finished speaking, Sujin, Higashi Shiro, Kachiki Byakuya, and Soifan all firmly opposed Urahara Kisuk's proposal. Head captains is a head captain. Wuchen leisurely closed his eyes to rest, as if everything had nothing to do with him. Shunsui Kyokura, Unohana Retsu, and Jushiro Yukitake did not say anything. Zaraki Kenpachi did not say anything either. It had nothing to do with him who became the captain. Mayuri was even more distracted as he looked at the corpses of Minos Grande. Are there no other candidates? Shunsui asked. Although he didn't object, it wasn't hard to see from his frown that he didn't want Dustless to be the head captain. Of course, there are other candidates. Kisuk Urahara smiled and said seriously, but, who has the confidence to fight Sosuke Aizen? Hearing this, all the captains were silent. They weren't afraid of Sosuke Aizen, but Kyoka Suigetsu's ability was a headache. There are only two paths for you now. Either cooperate with me and let me be the head captain to deal with Aizen, or wait for Sosuke Aizen to destroy all the Shinigami. Think about which is more important. Dustless suddenly interrupted. The head captain was the spiritual pillar of all the Shinigami, known as the strongest Shinigami, but now that he's dead, these captains have lost their backbone. Suddenly, Dustless remembered something important. He continued to attack these arrogant captains and said, "A long time ago, Sosuke Aizen took the Hogyoku from me. After fusing with it, his strength will increase exponentially. He'll be infinitely close to my original strength." These words immediately broke the captain's mental defenses. Dustless's strength when he fused with the Hogyoku was still unforgettable. The so-called head captain can kill one person with one slash. In other words, we don't have a choice. Apart from making him the head captain, there's no other choice? Shunsui asked with a complicated expression. Indeed. Only Dustless can compete with Sosuke Aizen, or even suppress him. After all, everyone is familiar with head captain Dustless's strength. Kyoka Suigetsu's ability is useless against him. Kisuke Urahara nodded. This time, even Seizen, who disliked Dustless the most, was silent. It was clear who was more important. If they didn't cooperate with Dustless, Soul Society would be destroyed. If they cooperated with Dustless, it would be a matter of the future. They had to compromise even if they didn't want to. Otherwise, Soul Society would most likely be destroyed. They had no choice. While everyone was deep in thought, Dustless gave Unohana Retsu a look. The latter smiled and nodded, then said, "Soul Society has no choice but to cooperate with Dustless. Therefore, I am willing to recommend him to be the head captain." Kisuke Urahara and Yi of the Four Maple Court looked at each other and nodded. For such an important matter, it doesn't seem right for Soul Society to look down on us Squad Zero. Just as everyone was about to compromise, a bald man Dustless hated jumped out and ruined his plan. Squad Zero had to show up at such an important time. There must be a problem. Chapter 1157. Dustless frowned. He didn't have a good impression of Team Zero. This group of people was worse than Old Man Yamamoto. For the so-called Soul King's safety, these people could sacrifice everything. His sight fell on the graceful Shadoro Senjumaru and Seo Tongsai. Wuchen only had a good impression of them. He teased them out of boredom, "Don't tell me you miss me, Senjumaru and Captain Seo." Hearing this, Chinju-maru raised her eyebrows and couldn't help but roll her eyes at Wuchen. She said coldly, "If you're talking nonsense, I don't mind digging out your only exposed eye. What do you think? Stop him from being the captain? Or agree? After all, you are Team Zero, the real boss of Soul Society." Shunsui put the ball in Team Zero's court and gave them full authority to make the decision. "We have no objection, Urahara. Kisuke is right, you are the only one in Soul Society who can resist Aizen Sosuke." A soldier from the War Master's division expressed his agreement. Suddenly, a sly smile appeared on his face. "However, just in case, we need to leave something in your body. If you turn against us, it will be a way to protect yourself." This bald monk looks honest and upright, but in fact, he is the most despicable person in Team Zero. Dustless raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, "Something like a seal? You suppressed all my strength, how can I compete with Aizen Sosuke? He took the Hogyoku." Now, there were only two people in Soul Society who could compete with Aizen Sosuke. One was Dustless, and the other was Ichigo Shinozaki. Ichigo Shinozaki was killed by Aizen Sosuke, but Dustless killed Aizen Sosuke, so no one was optimistic about Ichigo's chances. And he was just a traveler. "Of course not. In order to deal with you, we have developed a lot of things. You should be proud that Team Zero worked so hard for one person. Your body will be implanted with a special seal by me and the 1,000-hand pill. It won't have any special effect on your strength, but it will seep into every cell in your body. If you betray Soul Society, I will detonate the seal in your body, and all the cells in your body will be dismembered instantly." "I see." Dustless came to a realization. His gaze landed on Elder Wei's face as he said softly, "So you're implanting a time bomb in my body?" All the captains frowned, thinking that Team Zero had gone too far. This was equivalent to selling themselves to Team Zero. If they didn't obey, their lives would be in danger. Everyone's eyes fell on Dustless, thinking that he would refuse. "No problem, I promise you." Dustless smiled and said something shocking. This, are you sure you've thought it through?" Unohana Retsu approached Dustless and tried to dissuade him. Her phoenix eyes stared at Shudora Thousand Hand Pill and Seo Toshio. That special seal sounded like a trick, but with their abilities, it wasn't difficult to create it. Dustless was gambling with his life. "It's okay, staying in the abyss is very uncomfortable," Dustless said fearlessly. "Humph, idiot. You think that kind of thing can restrict me? Even if I'm blown to pieces and my body turns to ashes, I can still be reborn." Dustless was expressionless, but he was sneering in his heart. After all, the ten-tailed beast's identity was there, he could still be reborn. In the room, there were only 3 people standing: Seo Toshio, Shudora Thousand Hand Pill, and Dustless. "Are you going to take off my clothes again?" Dustless looked at the 2 girls and asked with a smile. "Remove the words again and again," Seo Toshio said with a straight face. Shudora Senjumaru did not mind at all. He appeared to be very indifferent. When he was making the Death Tyrant outfit for Wuchen, he had seen him naked. "Cut the crap, hurry up and take off these black bandages," Dustless said impatiently. He was impressed by the black technology of Team Zero. He used 96 Hado and took the initiative to attack with Void Flash, but he still couldn't destroy these seals. Shuro Senjumaru nodded and leaned close to Wu Chen to remove the seal for him. Because the distance was too close and she was half squatting, Wu Chen could even see her breasts with his sharp eyes. "Do you believe that I won't gouge your eyes out?" "I think this is the second time I've said this." Shudora Thousand Hand Pill frowned and said. "Unfortunately, you don't have the ability to do it." Layers of black bandages fell to the ground. Dustless stood up and stretched his body. After a pleasant stretch, he suddenly noticed the abnormality in his body and asked curiously, "What did you do to my body?" Dustless was shocked to find that there were countless starlight in his body, filling all the cells in his body. "If you dare to mess around, your body will explode in an instant," Shudora Thousand Hand Pill warned fiercely. Her face was cold, obviously she wasn't joking. "Of course I won't mess around. My loyalty to Soul Society can be witnessed by heaven and earth," Dustless promised solemnly, but he was laughing in his heart. "After I use Hogyoku to devour the Spirit King, everything will change. It's not late, it's time to go for the captain handover ceremony," Seo Toshio reminded. Dustless was about to become the captain of Soul Society, leading Soul Society's Shinigami and Aizen Sosuke to fight. The captains of Soul Society had mixed feelings. This was a misfortune and a blessing. There was no doubt that Dustless's strength was above Aizen Sosuke, but the tragedy was that the new captain still had ulterior motives. In short, Dustless and Soul Society were now tied together. Chapter 1158. Time flew, and 3 days later, Dustless took over Yamamoto's first division, becoming the second head captain in history. After Aizen Sosuke's attack, Soul Society suffered heavy losses. All the members of the first division were killed, including the captain and vice-captain. Not only the first division, but the Goding 13 division also suffered heavy losses. Every division suffered heavy losses. At this moment, the former head captain Yamamoto's seat was replaced by Dustless. Dustless's captain's Haori also had the word "first" on it. Ahem, seeing the heavy atmosphere, everyone was silent, as if they were still immersed in the sadness of the death of the head captain. Dustless had to stand up and make his presence known. "The dead are gone, my condolences. The most important thing now is to discuss how to deal with the crisis brought by Aizen Sosuke. Immediately send troops to fight Aizen Sosuke, and avenge Genryosai Sama." Sajin, who respected Yamamoto the most, said with a sad face. His eyes were red, and even his voice sounded like he was about to cry. If this big bear knows that I took Yamamoto's Zanpakuto ability and caused his death, he will definitely want to cut me into pieces. Seeing this, Dustless couldn't help but think, but he immediately shook his head and said, Soul Society has been hit hard by Hueco Mundo, and now we can't attack Hueco Mundo, let's just rest for a while. It took me a while to fuse with the Hogyoku, Aizen Sosuke will take longer than me. Then we should turn a deaf ear to the hatred of the head captain? This is unfair to his soul in heaven, I strongly oppose it. Sajin was extremely stubborn. Is this idiot's brain broken? Seeing this, Dustless frowned and was a little dissatisfied. Soul Society's combat power was completely lost, including Sajin, who was seriously injured and was now wrapped in bandages. Not only him, but the other captains were also wrapped in bandages. It's indeed not the right time for revenge, and we don't have the ability to do so. Shunsui also frowned and objected, we don't have the strength to fight back, and everyone is injured. Sakura Zuagen was stunned when he heard that. His wounds suddenly hurt, and he grimaced in pain. Even though he was unhappy, he could only suppress the unwillingness in his heart. Captain Nya, how is the investigation going? After a while, Dustless looked at Mayuri and explained, everyone, according to the current situation, Aizen's goal is to kill the Spirit King, but to reach the Spirit King Palace, we must use the King's Sword. Then, let's have Captain Nya tell us how to make the King's Sword. Captain Nya nodded and raised his voice. Wang Jian's creation requires 100,000 souls, as well as a heavy spiritual land with a radius of 1 spiritual land. The so-called heavy spiritual land refers to a special spot that has spirituality in the modern world. The place will move together with the era, and it is the easiest place to gather spiritual things and have spirituality in the modern world. In other words, Kangzucho in the modern world. After these words were spoken, all of the captains fell silent. Only one voice exploded. Kangzucho? That's the city where I live. Shinozaki Ichigo, who was silent, was shocked. He clenched his fists as he thought of Aizen Sosuke's overwhelming strength. He was in despair. Shinozaki Ichigo, looking at him with interest, Dustless said, after Soul Society suffered a heavy blow, there is a serious shortage of manpower. From now on, you are the acting Shinigami, responsible for cleaning up the Daishu in Kangzucho. After that, Dustless gave Yukitake Jushiro a look. The latter nodded and gave Shinozaki Ichigo a Shinigami symbol. No problem. Shinozaki Ichigo straightened his waist and promised. Although he hasn't been a Shinigami for long, he gradually liked this profession, and he needed the absolute power to protect his family. This kid, if he knows that I'm the one who killed his parents, what will he think? Dustless had a strange expression on his face. He saw Shinozaki Ichigo's unwillingness in the underworld. Idiot, do you think you can stop Sosuke Aizen? You think too highly of yourself. Dustless sneered. Shinozaki Ichigo was too weak compared to Aizen. Aizen killed Shinozaki Ichigo before he could devour the Hogyoku. After fusing with the Hogyoku, his strength would naturally increase. But, you idiots don't seem to understand what I mean. Looking at the Shinigami captains, Dustless smiled but didn't say anything. He wanted Aizen to fight his way to Soul King Palace. Soul King Palace was in a special space, and only Wang Jian could enter. As the head captain, Dustless didn't have time to be Wang Jian. I can use this chance to sneak into the Spirit King Palace while Sosuke Aizen creates Wang Jian. Dustless smiled. It was best that Aizen was willing to create Wang Jian. Wang Jian was the only way to enter Soul King Palace. Dustless didn't have a way to enter Soul King Palace, so he wanted Aizen to create Wang Jian. Ahem. Everyone, silence. Dustless calmed down and said seriously, the current crisis is to rebuild Soul Society and Soul Society. Shinozaki Ichigo will take care of Kangzucho for the time being. Dustless made the final decision. After thinking for a while, he said valiantly, for the future of Soul Society, we can only fight Aizen Sosuke to the death. As long as we are united, we can do anything. We are invincible. Soul Society's enemies will be trampled. Chapter 1159. These words had the captains running around in circles. They were all impassioned, their blood boiling as they walked out of the haze of their captain's death. The dead were gone, and the living had to face the future better. Although we've gathered our forces and are planning to evacuate Kazucho, we must at least monitor the situation, Dustless added. No problem. This is very easy. Mayuri was full of confidence. His tone was very certain. It was just a trivial matter. Dustless nodded, looked around, and continued, Is there anything else you want to say? If not, today's meeting will end here. Central Room 46 has been completely destroyed. It needs to be reorganized, Kuchiki Byakuya suddenly said. I object. I also object, those guys are simply vermin. Speaking of Central Room 46 makes me angry. Without this organization, Aizen Sanosuke's Kyoka Suigetsu would not have been able to achieve such a great effect. We must not reorganize. Kuchiki Byakuya's words were like stepping on a landmine, and the atmosphere instantly exploded. Everyone was disgusted with Central Room 46. Aizen Sanosuke's success was largely due to Central Room 46's authority. This organization was superfluous, and Soul Society did not need it. It could even be said that Central Room 46 was the main culprit. Whether it was the previous matter of dealing with the captains or Aizen Sanosuke's schemes, Central Room 46 was involved. Seeing this, Kuchiki Byakuya opened his mouth, but in the end, he chose to remain silent. The captains were all disgusted, and he was the only one who agreed to reorganize Central Room 46. Seeing Kuchiki Byakuya's silence, Dustless chuckled and fell silent. Shouldn't we recall the expeditionary army from Hueco Mundo? Shunsui turned to Dustless and asked. Aizen Sanosuke had already become the king of Hueco Mundo, and the expeditionary army would be annihilated sooner or later if they remained. It was better to take this opportunity to recall them and strengthen Soul Society. Then recall them. Dustless ordered, but he was puzzled. The expeditionary army had wandered Hueco Mundo for so many years, and it was a miracle that Aizen Sanosuke was still alive after returning to Hueco Mundo. Head Captain, you seem to have forgotten something. A pleasant voice sounded out. Looking towards the source, it was Unohana Lai. What is it? Dustless looked directly at Uno Huaretsu's face and said, You're not talking about summoning those masks from the modern world, are you? Even though they received the void form, they were once a part of Soul Society. Uno Hualai was very clear about her grudges and said, Not to mention, Soul Society was in the wrong in the first place. If we call them back, we'll be able to fill in the missing captain's position. That's a good plan, but I'm afraid they won't appreciate it. Dustless muttered, but he still said, Anyway, send someone to the modern realm to invite them. It's best if they agree, but don't force them if they refuse. All the captains agreed, as this was the most appropriate method. Now that Sosuke Aizen had completely fallen out with him, it would only make things worse if he went to war with the Legion. Not to mention that Soul Society was the one in the wrong from the start, and the Masked Legion was the one in the wrong. After a few more innocuous questions were asked, the captains' meeting came to an end. There were only a few figures left in the huge team room. Shinozaki Ichigo. Do you have anything else? In the first team room, all the captains went back to their own places. Only Shinozaki Ichigo stood there motionless. He didn't speak, nor did he answer Dustless's question. This kid, Dustless stared at the embarrassed Shinozaki Ichigo, who was holding his Zanpakuto tightly with a face full of unwillingness. Seeing this scene, he guessed something and joked, Don't tell me you want me to train you? Hearing this, Shinozaki Ichigo was startled. He looked at him strangely, then admitted, That's right, I hope head captain can train me. My mother and father were killed. I must have enough strength to protect my sister and bring the criminal to justice. I must make him pay with his blood. Shinozaki Ichigo clenched his fist and said unwillingly. When he mentioned the criminal, he gritted his teeth, and his face was filled with a rare madness. Dustless felt uncomfortable. After all, Shinozaki Ichigo was talking about him as his enemy. I don't have time to train you, and I don't know how to train you. The only way I can tell you is to stop talking nonsense and focus on fighting. Train an enemy to kill him? Only an idiot would do that. However, Shinozaki Ichigo didn't give up and insisted, Head Captain, you only need to fight with me. I can only improve if I find a suitable opponent. A suitable opponent? Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with contempt. Shinozaki Ichigo was as small as a grain of sand to him. Go find Zaraki. I believe he will be willing to fight with you. As Soul Society's Kenba. I have already fought with him, and I won by half. Shinozaki Ichigo said loudly with a touch of arrogance. Dustless saw this and thought, this kid seems to be arrogant just because he won against a captain. He didn't have time to mess around with Shinozaki Ichigo, so he continued, then you should go to the modern world. I believe Aizen Sosuke will send someone to investigate the situation in the modern world. Waving his hand, Dustless was about to leave, but Shinozaki Ichigo didn't know what was good for him. His next move angered Dustless. Chapter 1160. Kurosaki Ichigo decisively pulled out his giant Zanpakuto and blocked in front of Dustless, blocking his way. His face was full of determination, as if he wouldn't give up until he achieved his goal. Kurosaki Ichigo, you are playing with fire. I'm the captain of the Soul Society. What you're doing is equivalent to declaring war on the entire Soul Society, Wu Chen said with an unfriendly expression and a warning tone. However, Kurosaki Ichigo didn't appreciate it. His tone was firm and without any regret. He said, Head Captain, please teach me, I will do my best to, boom boom boom. Before he finished his words, a tyrannical impact sent Kurosaki Ichigo flying. He was like a willow branch that wasn't worth mentioning. Dustless didn't even make a move. He could only go with the flow, unable to resist. Crack crack crack. The wall of the first division exploded in the blink of an eye, and Kurosaki Ichigo collapsed into it. He didn't make a move. Kurosaki Ichigo was dumbfounded. His tone was more or less earth-shattering. He felt a huge sense of frustration that he had never felt before. The gap between us is so big. With your strength, it's impossible to catch up to my shadow, let alone train you. So, you should give up. Dustless, who was standing with his hands behind his back, said indifferently. His light tone mocked him for overestimating himself. Can't catch up to your body? That's not necessarily true. With a stern expression, Kurosaki Ichigo crossed through layers of space and appeared in front of Dustless in almost an instant. His thick hand grabbed towards Dustless's face. Seeing this, Dustless didn't dodge. 6 huge light belts attacked from all directions, and the corner of his mouth whispered, Bakudo number 61, Rokudo Light Prison. The light directly gathered, and Kurosaki Ichigo's movement was instantly stopped. Bakudo? After being a Shinigami for a few months, Kurosaki Ichigo wasn't ignorant. He said calmly, Kurosaki Byakuya used this when he went to the modern world to capture Rukia. It's useless against me. I won't fall for the same trick twice. He gritted his teeth and tried to tear the 6-staff light prison apart. However, the effect was negligible. Even after twisting for a long time, the 6-staff light prison showed no signs of loosening. On the other hand, Shinozaki Ichigo's face was red and he was panting heavily. How is this possible? It's the same move. Why can I break through Byakuya's Bind Dao but not this guy's Bind Dao? Shinozaki Ichigo muttered to himself in shock. The reason is very simple. Dustless looked at Shinozaki Ichigo who was struggling and said calmly, because I am the captain, and Kuchiki Byakuya is only the captain of the 6th division. The reason is so simple. Even though they were both captains, Dustless wasn't someone Kurosaki Byakuya could compare to. It was the same in all aspects. Dustless had reached the peak of the Shinigamis, ghost-slaying walking combat. Kurosaki Byakuya was naturally inferior to him. There was a huge difference between the two of them. Shinozaki Ichigo's face was extremely ugly. He looked at Dustless, who was so close to him, but he couldn't reach him. Let go. The difference is too great. The so-called training is too much. It's just a one-sided crush. Dustless mercilessly crushed Shinozaki Ichigo's self-esteem. He thought that this kid would give up, but he continued to release Ryatsu from his body. No, this kid isn't talking about training. He just wants to test the difference between us. Seeing through Shinozaki Ichigo's intention, Dustless's eyes flashed. Aizen Shinosuke planned to hurt Kurosaki Rukia and his companion. He probably wanted to use Dustless to measure the difference between him and Aizen Shinosuke. Shinozaki Ichigo's body released a huge amount of Ryatsu, and his appearance changed dramatically. Bankai, Sky Lock Moon Slash. Zanpakuto shrunk a few times and turned into a straight tachi. The blade was dark and long, and it was very elegant. It reflected Shinozaki Ichigo's resolute face. If I don't teach this kid a lesson, he won't know how strong he is. Dustless's expression was cold, and he immediately responded fiercely. Some people only know how strong they are when they are beaten up. Kakaka. After Bankai, Shinozaki Ichigo's strength increased. The 6 light belts formed by the Rokurosaki light prison were already showing signs of damage. Boom boom boom. Shinozaki Ichigo used his Ryatsu, and the light disappeared. He looked at Dustless with his sharp eyes, and his momentum reached the limit. He was like a ferocious wolf rushing at him. Soul Society didn't expect you to deal with Aizen Shinosuke, and the future of Soul Society won't be in the hands of an outsider like you, Shinozaki Ichigo. No one gave him the task of dealing with Aizen Shinosuke. As a human, it was difficult for him to kill Aizen, especially after secretly killing his parents. Dustless felt very uncomfortable with this kid appearing in front of him every day. Shoo shoo shoo. Looking up, the cold Zanpakuto fell from the sky, and the sharpness was enough to hurt people's eyes. Clang clang clang. The sharpness hit Dustless's left shoulder. Shinozaki Ichigo was shocked, and he didn't hold back at all. He used all his strength, and he thought that he could seriously injure Dustless, but the reality was different from what he imagined. The moment the Zanpakuto fell on Dustless's body, the huge force bounced Shinozaki Ichigo away. Clang! Kurosaki Ichigo's arm was numb and trembling. He couldn't even hold on to his Zanpakuto, and it fell to the ground. It was clearly a human body, but it gave him the illusion that he was cutting something hard like a meteorite or a diamond. Chapter 1161. Kurosaki Ichigo was shocked. He didn't expect Wu Chen to be so strong. Not only did he kill the team leader with a raise of his hand, but his body was also as hard as steel. No attack could cause any substantial damage to him. Staring at Dustless's calm expression, Shinozaki Ichigo suddenly had this illusion. His full-strength attack just now was like a tickle to Dustless. It didn't hurt or itch, as if nothing happened. Now do you know the difference between us? One is in the sky, and the other is on the ground. The sky and the ground will never be on the same level. This sentence was like a thunderbolt that instantly hit Shinozaki Ichigo. He felt worse than death. His eyes were blank, and his hands holding the Zanpakuto were sweating. The powerless voice entered every corner of his mind and stimulated Shinozaki Ichigo's nerves. He. Leave it to me, Ichigo, I will help you tear apart the bastard who looked down on you. A cold, hoarse, and arrogant voice suddenly appeared in his mind. It was very arrogant and arrogant. Everyone was not worth mentioning to it. Ichigo, who was in a daze, nodded uncontrollably, and then a strange white mask appeared on his face. At the same time, the temperature around him dropped rapidly. It was cold and piercing to the bone. It was as if he was stripped naked and thrown into the Antarctic continent. Roar, the unique howl of a wild beast spread out, and those who heard it trembled all over, their hair standing on end. This Ryatsu seems to be, carefully feeling the subtle changes in Ryatsu, Dustless's frozen face relaxed a little. Roar, seeing Dustless's expression relaxed, Shinozaki Ichigo's first thought was that Dustless was afraid. He instantly restrained his consciousness of resistance and completely released the hidden killer in his body. It really is you. Staring at the white mask on Shinozaki Ichigo's face, Dustless secretly despised him. Using a cheat when you can't beat me. This is really similar to Shinozaki Ichigo's style. It's you. Seeing Dustless, Shinozaki Ichigo was surprised. At this moment, his consciousness was completely taken over by the great void in his body. Now, the person who was talking to Dustless was definitely the void in his body. How rare. The monster created by Sosuke Aizen is only average in strength, but your memory is not bad. I destroyed your soul a few years ago. I didn't expect you to recognize me after being transferred into Shinozaki Ichigo's body. Dustless had a smile in his eyes. The violent wind blew against him, and his black hair danced in the wind. The expression of the great void hidden in Kurosaki Ichigo's body, which was white void, changed. His spiritual pressure became even denser, causing the ground to shake. Back then, Void White was easily killed by Dustless, but his spiritual pressure did not disappear. Because he had bitten Shinozaki Ishin, the power of the two merged into one. Now, it was inevitable that he would inherit it to Shinozaki Ichigo. I want you dead. The illusory Ichigo roared, and flames soared into the sky. The new and old grudges were stacked on top of each other, and his strength continued to rise. The Zanpakuto swept out, and a wisp of black sword pressure swept out. Getsuga Tensho. The moment the blade rushed out, the weak light instantly became several times stronger, and swallowed Dustless with the momentum of a whale. The edge of the slash was powerful enough to destroy a mountain. It was like a giant abyss that could not be seen, and it would be annihilated if it touched it. It's not a big deal to use the illusory spiritual pressure. Opening his palm, Dustless directly rushed forward. Bang bang bang. The small hand that looked more delicate than a woman's skin was surprisingly strong. The black slash was directly caught by Dustless with one hand, and it could not be moved at all. Crack crack crack. The sound of friction came, and the provoked Getsuga Tensho slammed into Dustless. Because of the strong force, dense sparks appeared in Dustless's palm. Final struggle. Glancing at the materialized slash in his hand, Dustless suddenly closed his 5 fingers, and then he exerted force. The roaring impact suddenly stopped, and the whole world returned to peace. Bang bang bang. The huge black slash collapsed and turned into streaks of black light that scattered in all directions. The scene was beautiful, and it looked like it was snowing. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. A murderous cold light came from the left, and the killing intent was terrifying. Wherever the blade passed, a layer of cold ice would be formed. Don't release your killing intent when you ambush someone, idiot. He shook his head and sighed, and a dazzling golden light swept out, laser. Pfft. The light beam went straight for Dustless, and when the blade of the Zanpakuto was about to penetrate Dustless's head, the great void mask that was hit by the golden light turned into countless particles. The blade also stopped, and it was only an inch away from Dustless's eyes. Bang! The great void mask was destroyed, and Shinozaki Ichigo also regained consciousness. However, he did not even have the strength to support his body, and could only lie on the ground admiring himself. His eyeballs were flashing with shock, and he was recalling the battle just now. Bang bang bang. There was a tremor in the corridor, and most of the Grim Reapers rushed over and surrounded Shinozaki Ichigo, and they all stared at him fiercely. How dare you attack the head captain? How dare you, a mere human? The members who rushed over said sternly, and their ferocious eyes could not wait to kill Shinozaki Ichigo. In the previous crisis, Dustless saved the entire Soul Society, and everyone was respectful to him, and they were very obedient. Soul Society has a heretic like you, and you dare to attack the head captain? You don't know your place. The Grim Reapers who rushed over rolled up their sleeves, as if they wanted to teach Shinozaki Ichigo a lesson. This is a misunderstanding. Dustless looked at Shinozaki Ichigo with pity, then closed his eyes and waved his hand, send him to the 4th Division for treatment. Chapter 1162. The Grim Reapers who wanted to teach Ichigo a lesson all stopped. Their sleeves that were rolled up also fell back down. When they heard that Dustless was protecting Ichigo, they also gave up on the idea of beating him up. They unwillingly carried Ichigo to the 4th Division. How dare he attack the head captain? When he recovers, we will definitely cripple him. If it wasn't for the head captain, we would have been dead. This guy who doesn't know what's good for him was also there. If it wasn't for the head captain, he might have already died. Now that he knowingly broke the law, he will be punished even more. If the head captain didn't order us to send him to the 4th Division for treatment, I would have killed him with me. Chaotic and indignant curses echoed back and forth incessantly. In the end, all of it fell into Dustless's ears. This group of death gods seemed to have all been brainwashed, showing a kind of die-hard loyalty towards Dustless. They were no different from religious fanatics. I'm just making use of you, idiots. Sitting on the chair in boredom and looking up at the monotonous ceiling, Wu Qin smacked his lips. He was deeply speechless about this group of death gods. When they could use you, they would treat you as their own father. When they had no value, they would be the object of everyone's disdain and abuse. You have gained everyone's sympathy and you are still complaining. You are too greedy. A pleasant voice entered his ears. Dustless purposely kept a straight face and looked towards the source of the voice. A beautiful figure walked over and said unhappily, breaking into the 4th Division without permission is a serious crime. You must be punished, Captain Unohana. After becoming the head captain, your temper has become worse. Walking gracefully in front of Dustless, Unohana Retsu laughed lightly and teased him. The alluring scent of her body entered his nostrils. Dustless suddenly became restless. He stared at Unohana Retsu. The charm that she gave off was like a deadly poison. Even though he knew that this woman was a rose with thorns, Dustless couldn't help but want to touch her body. Ouch, it hurts. A large hand suddenly appeared from the side and grabbed Unohana, who was caught off guard, and pulled her into his embrace. His other hand slipped into her clothes. Don't mess around, this is the 1st Division. Unohana panicked and her face turned red. At the same time, she looked around suspiciously, afraid that someone would come and disturb her. Don't worry, my fanatical fans have all gone to your 4th Division. Now, there's not even a shadow in the 1st Division. Who would care about the two of us? What's more, I've always been open-minded. I don't care about the occasion. Dustless's eyes darted around, as if he was trying to find a spot to ambush Unohana. You! Unohana's face turned red as she regretted her actions. Originally, she had only been joking with Dustless. Who would have thought that he would turn the act into reality? Unohana, who had been caught off guard, could only let it go. How despicable. Unohana, who couldn't win against Dustless, grumbled unhappily, if you mess around, you'll only get my body, but not my heart. Who wants your heart? I only want your body. Dustless shrugged and said without a care. Unohana was so angry that she almost fell over. She turned her head and glared at Dustless. The frivolous smile on his face was extremely annoying in Unohana's eyes. She knew that Dustless was doing it on purpose. What is it, Lai? Stopping what he was doing, Dustless calmly hugged Unohana. His mood changed in the blink of an eye, and his calm voice sounded very serious and confident. What an unfathomable guy. Unohana calmed her thoughts and said bluntly, I discovered Shinozaki Ichigo's companion, Inoue Orihime. Her ability is very special and mysterious. If possible, I might be able to borrow her ability to remove the seal on your body. Dustless could not help but be stunned when he heard this. A strange look flashed in his eyes as he asked, Lai, is this the only reason you came to find me? Unohana looked at Dustless strangely. A strange look appeared on her face as she asked, of course. After all, you are being threatened by Team Zero. Since I have chosen to stay on the same boat with you, I will sincerely help you. Dustless did not reply after she finished speaking. He only hugged Unohua Lai's waist even tighter. The two of them were almost glued together. Lai, I'm sorry. It's my fault for making you worry. Don't worry, there's no seal in this world that can bind me. It's just the Zero Squad's wishful thinking to make me obedient. They're just too full of themselves. Dustless sincerely apologized and didn't try to hide anything from them. Unohua Lai could not help but frown when she heard this. A trace of doubt flashed in her eyes. Just as she was about to say something to dissuade him, Dustless's calm eyes were like a peerless medicine that soothed the worry in her heart. She did not know why, but she suddenly felt enlightened. That's true. Unohua Lai nodded her head. Her worries also disappeared. As a person who was equivalent to a miracle, it was not strange for him to create a miracle. Dustless had been sealed before, but in the end, he still grew wings and flew away. It doesn't matter if you believe it or not. I am undying and indestructible. They can't restrict me at all. Although her voice was very light and sounded more like a joke, Unohua Lai's voice was very firm and gave off a feeling of confidence. What an exquisite spiritual pressure. At this moment, an extraordinary spiritual pressure quietly spread out and enveloped Soul Society like a breeze. The weak energy fluctuation was mixed in with the wind and waves. Even a captain-level Grim Reaper might not be able to detect it. Chapter 1163. There was no perfect move in this world. Although the Ryatsu was subtle, Dustless sensed it clearly. After all, he was strong enough. Who could it be? Lowering her head, Unohana Retsu was also very curious. She hugged herself and looked very cute. Let's go and see. As the captain, I should be the one to suppress the situation. Patting his chest, Dustless smiled proudly. He was very arrogant. Many people had thought about kicking Yamamoto out of the captain's position and replacing him, but no one could actually do it. You can go by yourself. There are still a lot of things waiting for me to deal with in the 4th Division. That Shinozaki Ichigo is probably the only one who can heal him. As the head captain, don't act like a child, Unohana Retsu complained. That brat overestimated himself. He wanted to use my strength to measure Aizen's strength. That's stupid. I'm already giving him face by not killing him. Dustless said disapprovingly. If it was in the past, Kurosaki Ichigo would have been dismembered. Overestimating himself and wanting to challenge others was a crime punishable by death. I'll leave first. I'll go and see who that brat is. In the sky above Soul Society, two figures stood. They barely knew each other. Hey. Ulquiorra, is that guy really as scary as you say? I feel that Aizen-sama is deliberately lying to us. He must be afraid that we will be careless when facing Soul Society, so he made up an enemy out of thin air. His purpose is to make us cautious. The muscular Azurite said with certainty. He blinked his eyes and looked like he was very smart. Ulquiorra just kept silent. He didn't even look at him. He deliberately released a weak Ryatsu to sweep across Soul Society. Only a few people felt Ulquiorra's Ryatsu. That guy is here. I will crush him and let him know how powerful I am. Shaking his giant fist, Yami was full of confidence. I don't believe that there is anyone in this world who can defeat Aizen-sama. The news of his defeat must be fabricated by those minions. Yumi, Ulquiorra could no longer bear the nagging of his teeth. He turned his head and said bluntly, the group of minions you mentioned includes me, and you? Impossible. You are Vasto Lord. How could he be a lackey? At the end of his sentence, Yumi's face was full of confusion. Then, a silly smile appeared on his face, as if he was joking with him. Because I am one of the defeated minions. Of course, Sir Aizen is also included. Yasumi froze, sweating profusely. He looked around suspiciously, trying to see if Aizen Sosuke would suddenly come out and kill him. I was wondering why the spiritual pressure was so familiar. No wonder it was the two of you. In front of Yumi, light surged and condensed into Dustless's body. Carefully looking at Yumi and Ulquiorra, Dustless asked in puzzlement, "What are you doing in Soul Society? Are you here to die?" After saying that, Dustless released his killing intent. "What's wrong with this bastard? How many people did he kill?" Yumi roared in shock and anger. He instinctively looked at Ulquiorra and saw that his face was full of depression and fear. Even the depths of his green eyes were dotted with some unprecedented fear. Captain Haori is actually one. Could it be that this guy is the strongest head captain? It shouldn't be. I remember someone said that the captain of Soul Society is an old man. Yumi said with a puzzled face. The way he looked at Dustless was also very strange. He couldn't feel his spiritual pressure. This person was small, his face was pale, and his first impression was that he was terminally ill. "Boy, who are you?" After thinking for a long time, Yumi still couldn't figure it out, so he asked impatiently. His tone was irritated and tyrannical. His eyes were as big as a bronze bell, and he stared at Wu Chen. He raised his huge fist, as if he would kill Wu Chen immediately if he didn't give him a satisfactory answer. Pointing to his face, Dustless teased, "I advise you not to know who I am. Otherwise, you will feel uncomfortable." "Just you?" Hearing this, Yumi, who had a bad temper, was so angry that he laughed. His fist was suddenly covered with a layer of crimson brilliance. When he was about to punch, Ulquiorra's next move scared Yumi. He took a few steps forward and immediately bowed 90 degrees to Dustless. "Dustless, Sama, Aizen, Sama has a message for you." Calling a reaper, Sama? Yumi suddenly felt his head spinning. He staggered and almost fell to the ground. When he was about to ask why, Yumi suddenly remembered a popular name in Hueco Mundo, Great Void Assassin. "You shouldn't be the Great Void Assassin, right? I heard that many Arancars of 10 blades died in your hands. Even the former king of Hueco Mundo was killed by you." The look in Yumi's eyes clearly changed. He looked at Dustless as if he was a monster. He was no longer as arrogant as before. He even recalled Dustless's shocking battle record. His body uncontrollably retreated behind Ulquiorra. "Great Void Assassin? That's a good name." Dustless nodded seriously. Although he didn't know which 10 blades were killed by Yumi, one thing was certain. He killed Ulquiorra. To be honest, this visit to Soul Society was actually entrusted by Aizen, Sama. He hopes to cooperate with Dustless, Sama. Ulquiorra's expression was humble, and his tone was respectful. In a world where the strong were respected, there was no racial division. Chapter 1164. Dustless sized up the reserved Ulquiorra with great interest, and he couldn't help but laugh. "Join forces?" As if he heard the funniest joke in the world, Dustless curled his lips in disdain. "Dragons don't mix with snakes. That kid is famous for being despicable and shameless. He must be up to no good." Wu Chen's blatant ridicule made Ulquiorra and Yumi's faces twitch unnaturally, but they could only endure it and not dare to flare up. Mocking Boss Aizen in front of them was really hateful. Aizen Sama is sincere. The course Yumi overcame the fear in his heart and looked at Dustless with a fanatical look. "After unifying the world, we can, laser." The golden light whizzed down with infinite power and was difficult to catch. What a fast speed! Yumi was shocked when he saw this. This light beam was only as thick as a thumb, but it gave him a very dangerous feeling. Considering the power of this light, Yumi decisively stepped back. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Ryatsu erupted under his feet. When he was about to step back, Yumi suddenly felt a sharp pain in his arm. He screamed in pain, and his face was as pale as snow. There was a charred hole on his right arm. It is undeniable that your speed is very fast, or rather, the speed of breaking a plane is very fast. But compared to me, you are still too young. Both Yumi and Ulquiorra's face changed slightly. "You bastard." Just when Yumi couldn't bear it anymore and was about to erupt with Ryatsu, Ulquiorra stood in front of him. This was Soul Society, and if they fought, they would suffer. Aizen Sama is willing to join forces with you. After we succeed, we will join forces to divide the world equally. Ulquiorra changed his tone, and his tone was full of endless temptation. However, Dustless smiled disdainfully again. He flipped his hand and released a huge flash of light. Dao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes Thief Sky Shaking Thunder Cannon. This guy doesn't know what's good for him. Staring at the thick flash of light that cut through the void, Ulquiorra's green eye sockets were burning with raging flames even though he was a calm person. He and Yumi had lowered their posture and stature, but Dustless didn't have the slightest awareness of friendship. Instead, he started a fight because of a small disagreement. Ring turn. Aware of the flash of light, Yumi and Ulquiorra didn't dare to be careless. They avoided the light and turned to attack Dustless from two different directions. Clang! The Zanpakuto was unsheathed, and two rays of light, one red and one blue, attacked from the front and back. As expected of Aizen Sosuke's subordinates. You chose to kill him to silence him. This is very similar to Aizen's style of doing things. The only flaw is that you are far too weak compared to Sosuke Aizen. While Chakra was raging, Dustless didn't forget to ridicule the two and said contemptuously, "Your Aizen Sama is actually just a clown who plays tricks." These words were like a blade that penetrated into the two's body, destroying their physical body and spirit. The two burst out with more powerful spiritual pressure fluctuations at the same time. You two idiots are really naive. Even Sosuke is not my opponent, let alone the two of you. The narrow world of Hueco Mundo is your territory. On the world stage, the two of you are too weak. Energy fluctuations gushed out of the body, and transparent ripples spread. At the moment when Ulquiorra and Yumi were about to crush themselves, a transparent key shield suddenly formed. Shinra Tensei. The invisible ripples contracted and formed a hard sphere, forming a perfect 360-degree defense with no blind spots. Let's deal with him together. Yumi and Ulquiorra looked at each other and quickly exchanged glances. Their spiritual pressure began to surge, and the strength of Zanpakuto in their hands gradually became deeper. Ka. Spider-web-like cracks suddenly appeared on the key shield defense. As the two's strength increased endlessly, the cracks swallowed the entire sphere formed by Shinra Tensei. Bang bang bang. After a second, the defense circle exploded and shattered. The two Zanpakuto crossed and cut Dustless at the same time. After a lot of blood gushed out of his body, he fell powerlessly. Tisk, it's just a so-so. I was looking forward to it. Yumi withdrew his spiritual pressure and said with disdain. These days, there were too many people who didn't live up to their name. Seeing this, Ulquiorra was nervous as if he was facing a great enemy. He looked around suspiciously, and Vasto Lord's detection ability was open to the limit. He had the honor of fighting with Dustless before and knew that he would never be obliterated so easily. This was equivalent to a Vasto Lord being killed by Jillian, which was absolutely impossible. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, sure enough, at this time, the sky was extremely dark, especially under Yumi and Ulquiorra's feet. It was extremely dark and was covered by the falling mahogany group. The me you killed was just a shadow clone. Glancing at the two who were in a daze, Dustless finally told the ruthless truth. Immortal art, bright god gate. Boom boom boom. A large number of mahogany crushed the sky, and the darkness seemed to suppress the whole world. The rain of bullets mercilessly annihilated Ulquiorra and Yumi. Dustless keenly noticed that the spiritual pressure of one of them disappeared instantly. Even after being hit by Bright God Gate, you can still barely stay alive. Although it's extremely embarrassing, it's still commendable. Looking at the group that was shattered into pieces on the ground, Dustless smiled and said, "The war hasn't broken out yet, but the so-called 10 Blade seems to be close to being wiped out." Chapter 1165. As for Ulquiorra, his luck was obviously better. Of course, it was related to his carefulness and his physical ability. Even if his limbs were crushed and destroyed by the power of Bright God Gate, he could still move freely and even regenerate them. As for Yumi, it was a tragedy. His huge body was directly smashed into pieces by the Rashomon gate. The most frightening thing was that the bright god gate seemed to have an invisible mouth that sucked in his corpse. Even Ulquiorra, who was used to seeing storms and waves, changed his expression slightly when he saw this scene, and his expression became unnatural. Immortal art, seeing Dustless quickly make hand seals again, Ulquiorra suddenly realized that something was wrong. Remembering the things that Aizen gave him before, he immediately took out 2 photos and threw them to Dustless. 10,000 things heavens pull. Dustless frowned slightly, looking at the photos that deviated from their trajectory, and pulled them over with one hand. Immediately, he looked at the 2 lively girls in the photos, and his Ryatsu swept out uncontrollably from his palm, shattering the photos into pieces. Aizen Sosuke threatened me? Dustless asked indifferently. The way he looked at Ulquiorra also changed. If he was joking just now he was full of killing intent. The 2 girls in the photos were Candace and Bombietta. I don't know about this. I was just following Aizen-sama's orders. Ulquiorra's injuries recovered, and his body that was crushed by Dustless was also restored. He casually opened his mouth and looked at Dustless deeply before leaving, as if he wanted to remember him forever. The indifference that would never change was forever imprinted in Ulquiorra's heart. Hold on, tell Aizen Sosuke for me. Glancing at Ulquiorra, Dustless said indifferently, the biggest difference between a smart person and a fool is that he knows what to do and what not to do. If he does something that he shouldn't do, no matter how smart or cunning he is, only death is left for him. Hueco Mundo, in the desolate Las Noches Palace. Although Sosuke Aizen had safely escaped from Soul Society and ruled over Hueco Mundo, the fundamental changes in Hueco Mundo hadn't changed. In fact, after Sosuke Aizen took over, the fighting in Hueco Mundo became even more serious than before. After arriving at Hueco Mundo, Sosuke Aizen discovered a big problem. The 10 Blades plan that he had painstakingly researched had all been directly or indirectly destroyed by Dustless. More than half of the 10 Blade breaching members were killed by Dustless. This was a huge loss. Just thinking about it gave Aizen a severe headache. Inside the spacious palace. Bang bang bang. The aftermath of the destruction drifted from Aizen Sosuke's body, causing countless cracks to appear around Las Noches Temple. Aizen Sosuke stared at Ulquiorra below. A huge wave of majesty pressed down on him, making him unable to breathe. The great ethereal realm's souls were terrified. Looking at Aizen Sosuke, they couldn't help but bend down, their knees almost touching the ground. Ulquiorra, is this what that person said? Sosuke Aizen didn't move. His voice was still as gentle as before, but in fact, his veins were popping out all over his body. Being humiliated like this by Wu Chen was like being slapped 10 times in the face. His old face hurt. Aizen-sama. The number 1 lackey, East Sensei, stood beside Sosuke Aizen and bowed his head. After we leave Soul Society, Dustless will become the head captain. Bastard. Hearing this, Aizen Sosuke cursed and spat out a dense ryatsu from his mouth. The soldiers standing around him were directly crushed to dust by Aizen Sosuke. Killing Yamamoto is a cause for celebration, but who would have thought that in the end, it would benefit that kid? Is there no one in Soul Society who would choose a criminal to be the head captain? Sosuke Aizen felt very uncomfortable. For the first time, he knew what it felt like to lift a stone and smash it on his own foot. It was painful, it was aggrieved. He had a stomach full of bitterness, but he couldn't spit it out. He could only swallow it down. Killing Yamamoto was a cause for celebration, but getting a godlike opponent in exchange was very sad. In contrast, Sosuke Aizen suddenly felt that the head captain was too cute. Aizen-sama, attacking Soul King Palace requires a king key. Kangzucho is undoubtedly suitable, and the Shinigami have already evacuated there. Should we? East Sensei made a throat-slitting gesture, obviously suggesting that Sosuke Aizen take advantage of this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to attack Kangzucho. There's no need to rush, we're not ready yet. Everything is still in progress. The 10 Blades were all destroyed by that man. I must continue to gather more troops to deal with Soul Society. Thinking of the 10 blades that Dustless destroyed, Sosuke Aizen's face turned pale. Although they were just pawns, they were very useful to him now. It could even be said that it was a matter of life and death. Almost all of the original members of the 10 blades were destroyed by Dustless. Sosuke Aizen had to come up with a new plan to deal with Soul Society. Chapter 1166. The scenery of Quiet Soul Courtyard was like spring all year round, beautiful beyond words, with hundreds of flowers blooming everywhere. Soul Society was full of vitality, showing signs of prosperity. Luanju, I told you to hit my back, not my neck, and with your strength. Are you trying to kill me or do you want to hit my back? Turning his head, Dustless looked at Matsumoto Luanju, who looked like she ate gunpowder, and said angrily, Are you thinking about Ikemara-jin again? Matsumoto Luanju was silent, her beautiful eyes seemed to be covered with a thin veil, muddy and without light. Luanju-ne-san, Captain Ikemara-jin has betrayed us. Hinamori pulled the corner of Matsumoto Luanju's clothes and reminded her. Yes, he is determined to follow Sosuke Aizen, standing on the opposite side of Soul Society. The next time we meet, I'm afraid we will be enemies. Rukia also sighed. His childhood friend had betrayed Soul Society and betrayed him. Anyone would be deeply affected. They have a point, Luanju. After Wuchen took a sip of tea, he showed an expression of enjoyment. He immediately glanced at the absent-minded Matsumoto Ranjaku and waved his hand to surrender helplessly. If I meet him on the battlefield in the future, I will try to keep him alive. Hearing this, Matsumoto Ranjaku's face lit up with joy. While Wuchen was daydreaming on the couch, she pushed his head into her majestic mountain. Let go of me, do you want to squeeze me to death? Dustless shouted as he struggled. When he recovered, his mouth twitched, and he angrily shouted at Matsumoto Luanju, What are you doing? Remember that I'm the captain now, not your. The voice at the edge of his mouth stopped abruptly. Suddenly realizing that his wording was wrong, Wuchen hurriedly changed his words. He looked around and took the 3 women into his eyes. He said with emotion, At that time, I brought the 3 of you into the 7th division, and now I put you into the 1st division. Fate is really unpredictable. Dustless was barely related to Soul Society, and there were only 0 divisions Seo Toshio and Shudora Senjumaru, and the 4th divisions Unohana Retsu and Toru Sato. In addition, there were the 3 girls in front of him. Placing the 3 of them in the first team was actually a form of protection. Are they here? Squinting his eyes, Wu Chen, who was sleeping on the rocking chair, suddenly opened his eyes. A special figure had appeared in front of him, wearing a colorless kimono, holding a walking stick and wearing a blue and white hat. Did they agree, store manager Urahara? Wu Chen lazily asked as he leisurely swayed back and forth on the couch. You. Seeing this, Urahara Kisuke didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dustless was the only captain in Soul Society who was as casual and unruly as him. Even Zaraki Kenpachi knew what should be done and what shouldn't be done. Only Dustless was the most casual. As a captain, he didn't have the arrogance and style of a captain. Just as you thought, they did agree and are willing to send someone to fill the vacant captain position in Soul Society. Urahara Kisuke said seriously, he was talking about the Masked Legion. Now, there are finally people to fill the vacant captain positions. Dustless yawned as he stretched his body. His eyes were wide open, giving people the illusion that he was about to fall asleep. Let's go see them, inside the 1st Division's building. Dustless circled around the 3 people in front of him and said with dissatisfaction, The Masked Legion is far more than just the 3 of you. If I remember correctly, they invited all of you to come back to Soul Society. That's not necessary, they are already used to life in the modern world, Soul Society is not suitable for them. Hirako Shinko, the leader of the Meat Legion, said with a cautious tone. He didn't fully trust Dustless, this mysterious captain. What, can't I? Sarutobi Nishikori immediately stood up and questioned. Her whole body was like a barrel of gunpowder. She said in an extremely unfriendly tone, A gigolo like you can become a captain, is there no one else in Soul Society? What did you say? Apologize to me immediately. Hinamori, who was standing behind Dustless, glared at her. Her zanpakuto was already out of its scabbard. It seems that she hasn't let go of her complaints against me. Glancing at Sarutobi Nishikori, Dustless waved his hand to stop the tense situation and said, "In that case, Captain Hirako will return to your previous 5th Division, just the two of you." Staring at Lisa and Sarutobi Nishikori, Dustless bowed his head and thought for a while before saying, "The original captain of the 9th Division, Rokush Kunai, has died in battle. Now, Miss Lisa will be in charge. 110 years ago, these people were the death gods of captains or seats. Now, they all have bankai, and all of them can turn into void, so they are fully qualified to be the captain." As for Sarutobi Nishikori, staring at the proud girl with a golden ponytail, Dustless couldn't think of a suitable position for her. The captain of the 3rd Division will be taken over by the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant from Hueco Mundo Expeditionary Force. Chapter 1167. Hearing this, Sarutobi was like a cat whose tail was stepped on. Her hair stood on end as she glared at Dustless. Her eyes were cold. "I've been a vice-captain since 110 years ago. Do you want me to be a vice-captain again?" "No way." Sarutobi didn't even think about it. "I suspect you're using this to avenge a personal grudge." Sarutobi had a grudge against Dustless. "What are you talking about? Watch your tone." Hinamori, who was standing behind Dustless, couldn't hold back her anger and shouted, "Head captain taking you in is already a great favor. Don't forget that you were once wanted criminals in Soul Society. Who do you think saved you?" Hinamori's words made the room go silent. Even Sarutobi was stunned. This was an undeniable fact. After the annihilation of the Central Chamber 46, everything was temporarily handled by Wu Chen. All matters big and small were decided by him. It was also Dustless who gave the order to pardon the Masquerade Corps. "You can live under the sun and come and go as you please. You can even stand here as a Shinigami. This is all because of head captain's wisdom," Hinamori said righteously. "Why did I suddenly become Aizen?" Wu Chen, who was sitting on the chair in silence, said with a smile. Then he looked at Asakiri Ri with expectation in his eyes. It seemed that he wanted to hear her rebuttal. You. Sarutobi was speechless. She thought for a long time but couldn't come up with an excuse. Her face was red as she held her zanpakuto in anger. Even Hirako Masako and Lisa Yasumaru were silent and did not reply. The one who framed them was Sosuke Aizen, and now the one who pulled them back to heaven was Dustless. "Then don't you mean we should be grateful to him?" Sarutobi obviously thought of a countermeasure. Sarutobi sneered, "The head captain you're talking about is just using our strength to deal with Aizen." After that, Sarutobi Ri looked at Wu Chen with bright eyes. "Am I right, head captain?" Hearing this, Dustless was indifferent. He glanced at the arrogant Sarutobi and said lightly, "You have seen Aizen Sosuke's Shirkai, Kyoka Suigetsu. You can't deal with him with your strength. You're not even as useful as Shinozaki Ichigo," Dustless added. Hearing this, the faces of the 3 members of the Masked Legion became gloomy. They clenched their fists and stared at Dustless with uncertain eyes. The hot-tempered Sarutobi, rolled up her sleeves as if she was going to teach Dustless a lesson. "This is the truth. Shinozaki Ichigo didn't see the release process of Kyoka Suigetsu. In addition, his strength is also good. He has the strength of a captain. Even if he's not as strong as Aizen, at least he won't be confused by Aizen's zanpakuto." Dustless looked at Sarutobi calmly as he said, "Are you looking down on us?" Sarutobi snorted. "That's not it." Wu Chen shook his head. His next sentence immediately ignited the flames in the world. He said, "I'm just stating a fact that I saw." "Then you're still looking down on me." Sarutobi walked in front of Dustless and almost smashed the table. She stared at Dustless's indifferent face and said, "If you defeat me in 10 moves, I will admit defeat and accept your conditions." 10 moves? Dustless frowned. His lips moved, but he didn't say anything. He looked at Sarutobi quietly. Humph, don't look at me so pitifully. It's useless even if you beg me. But this is the price you have to pay for provoking me and looking down on me. Holding his hands in front of him, 8 Persimmon quietly looked at Wu Chen, but he also saw Wu Chen looking at him quietly. He said impatiently, then I'll give you a chance of 30 moves. Really, you are definitely the weakest head captain. Don't tell me you got here through the back door. I think Sarutobi misunderstood. Dustless sighed and said lightly, I don't need 30 moves to deal with Sarutobi. You won't even need 1 move. It's too difficult for you to fight me. You will also lose. Everyone was petrified when they heard this. They looked at Dustless, who didn't change his expression. You bastard. How dare you? After a while, Sarutobi screamed in indignation. If I lose, you can do whatever you want with me. You can kill me or torture me as you wish, Wu Chen said indifferently. After saying that, Wu Chen's eyes had already begun to change. 3 deep jade hooks flashed out of his eye sockets. They were very mysterious and powerful. Humph, if I lose, I will, boom. Without waiting for Sarutobi to finish her words, Dustless's Sharingan glanced at her, and Sarutobi fell directly to the ground. She fainted and lost her ability to move. Everyone was stunned by this scene. They rubbed their eyes and thought that they were dreaming. Dustless didn't even move his hand. You dare to sneak attack me? Damn it, despicable. Sarutobi, who was lying on the ground, had an ugly expression on her face. She cursed Dustless for being shameless. Her eyes were burning with anger. She couldn't wait to pounce on Dustless and beat him up, but she had no strength to resist. I just don't want you to lose too badly. Dustless ignored Sarutobi's insults and said indifferently, you will be one of the members of Soul Society's Godii 13 from now on. We will see each other all the time. There's no need to act like enemies. Chapter 1168. Ri Shiri gritted her teeth and glared at Wu Chen. That unshakable and calm face was especially dazzling in her eyes. Ri Shiri was so angry that she trembled and desperately clenched her teeth to stabilize her body. Your willpower is truly astonishing. His calm eyes widened a little, revealing a hint of surprise. Nishihara was sweating profusely as she stood up. Her eyes were red as she held her Zanpakuto and stared at Dustless's handsome face. You want to kill me in 1 move? Dream on. Nishihara was gasping for breath. Even though she was on the verge of death, she was still holding on. Although I deliberately suppressed my eye power, she can still stand up. She is indeed not bad. She can be the leader. Wu Chen nodded secretly and looked at the persevering Ri Shiri in surprise. Is that so? That's still not enough. Dustless shook his head and continued, if I send you to be the captain of the 3rd Division, I'm afraid it won't be long before the 3rd Division is removed from Soul Society, Hishihari-san. Why? Hinamori blinked and asked curiously, even if Sosuke Aizen wants to attack Soul Society, the head captain will stop him. No, you misunderstood me. Sosuke Aizen is an external factor, I'm talking about internal factors. Dustless shook his head mysteriously. Then what do you mean by internal factors? Hirako Shinko asked. You don't know? Dustless said with a look of disdain, of course it's Hishihari-san. She's the biggest internal factor. If the 3rd Division is handed over to her, it will collapse. If Sosuke Aizen wants to destroy the 3rd Division, he'll need to send someone to do it. Hishihari-san won't even need to lift a finger to destroy the 3rd Division. Wu Chen said seriously. His tone was unusually solemn. Pfft. Hinamori, Hirako Masako, and Lisa couldn't help but laugh out loud, and their necks were all red. Nishihara's personality wasn't suitable to be a captain. I'm going to kill you, you bastard. The angry Ri Nishi descended from the sky with Zanpakuto, and the sharp edge slashed towards Wu Chen's head. Ri Nishi was in a fit of anger, and the condensed power was enough to split Wuchen into two. There are a lot of naughty and disobedient kids these days. Wu Chen had a headache and frowned. This 8 persimmon was obviously a problematic child in this world. Clang! Hinamori raised her eyebrows as she pulled out her Zanpakuto and stood in front of Dustless. The Zanpakuto clashed against each other. Hinamori was obviously not as strong as Ri, and she was forced to retreat again and again. She was obviously not Ri's opponent. Head Captain. Just as Hinamori was about to fall, a pair of hands steadied her body. After a short moment of absent-mindedness, Hinamori turned around and saw Dustless. You're so despicable, abusing your position as the captain. I heard that when you just became the captain, you found 3 beautiful team members to join the first team. No, it should be your personal guards. Ri Shiri exposed Wu Chen's past without hesitation. I don't have a vice captain in the first division, so it's easy to find former members. Looking at your sour face, are you jealous? Dustless pursed his lips and smiled, teasing Nishihara. You have a sharp tongue, I'm going to beat you up. His face was red, he was no match for Hinamori, so he had no choice but to move past Hinamori and slash his Zanpakuto towards Wu Chen's throat. The blade of the Zanpakuto flashed with a cold light as if it had not tasted blood for many years. Clang! Just as she was about to cut off Dustless's throat, she raised her left arm and grabbed the Zanpakuto. His skin was as hard as steel, and Nishihara couldn't hurt Dustless at all. Stop it, Nishihara! Hirako Shinko shouted with an irresistible command. After all, he was the leader of the masquerade army. Humph, you're lucky, kid. She couldn't take advantage of him, so she could only take advantage of him with her mouth. She couldn't beat him, and she couldn't even scold him. Her whole body was boiling, and she was about to explode. In that case, this matter ends here. At the same time, in another direction of Hueco Mundo, Sosuke Aizen gathered a large number of troops. Looking around, the entire Hueco Mundo was densely packed. Hundreds of large black caverns were opened, and countless grand voids came out from them. Aizen-sama, isn't it too early to attack the modern world? Inside Virtual Night Temple, East Sensei looked at Aizen Sosuke, who had closed his eyes and was silent. He was quite worried. Although Hueco Mundo had a slight advantage, it was gone after Dustless became the head captain. And now, they were facing a great crisis. I just ordered them to destroy the modern world to create a favorable environment for Wang Jian. We're not at war with Soul Society, so there's no need to worry. Sosuke Aizen looked at Higashihara, then closed his eyes again. At this moment, he had completely integrated the Hogyoku into his body. Feeling the boundless power, Sosuke Aizen was so excited that his lips trembled. His eyes were shining as if he could see the future when he stepped on Dustless's corpse and ascended to the throne. Sosuke Aizen wasn't worried about this operation. He only sent a large number of Jillians to invade the modern world to prepare for Wang Jian. It didn't matter even if the entire army died. After all, they were just pawns. It didn't matter if they died. Chapter 1169. Sosuke Aizen launched a large-scale attack. It was impossible to ignore him. Gathering countless Jillians to attack the main world had already surpassed the level of petty theft. This was a serious provocation, so Soul Society naturally had to respond. What if their captains stop us? East Sensei asked worriedly. No matter how powerful the Jillians were, they weren't captains. Don't worry, those Jillians are just sacrificial pawns. It's fine if they can complete the mission, but if they can't, then so be it. Plus, those captains will be in big trouble, especially head Captain Dustless. Sosuke Aizen laughed coldly. His hoarse voice was like the hiss of a poisonous snake, making people shudder. First Division's captain's meeting. Wuchen opened his eyes calmly and looked at the team leaders who were standing in 2 rows. He nodded with satisfaction. He was the only one sitting in the entire First Division. These former colleagues could only stand. He felt particularly comfortable. Due to the addition of several new captains, the entire Godii 13 had a new look. Sosuke Aizen sent a large number of Jillians to invade the modern world. He definitely doesn't have good intentions. Shunsuke Aizen said seriously. No one in Hueco Mundo had this ability other than Sosuke Aizen, who could mobilize thousands of Jillians. We must send someone to stop him. Yukitake Jushiro followed. Yes. The captains responded to Shunsuke Aizen's call and nodded. Shinozaki Ichigo can't hold on in the modern world. It's difficult for him to fight thousands of Jillians alone. The newly appointed Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant said. She then suggested to Dustless, head captain, we should immediately send someone to support him. Hearing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows. He was still counting on Sosuke Aizen to create Wang Jian. When the time comes, he can use this opportunity to invade Soul King Palace and devour the Soul King. Now that Sosuke Aizen finally made his move, Dustless naturally couldn't stop him. Of course, we must protect the dignity of Soul Society. Dustless slapped the table and looked at Toshiro Captain and Captain Nakamura will work together with Shinozaki Ichigo to wipe out the Jillians. Captain Kue, Captain Zaraki, and Captain Nia will hide in Hueco Mundo and cut off the connection between Hueco Mundo and the modern world. Yes, head captain. The efficiency of Soul Society was extremely fast. As soon as the captain meeting ended, a steady stream of captains and Shinigami poured into Hueco Mundo. Nishiya Higashi Shiro and Katsumura Zuasian were on their way to Kazucho. Without the captains and Grim Reaper, Soul Society became much quieter. Dustless was also helpless. He couldn't just ignore Sosuke Aizen, so he made a small fuss. In fact, he wanted Sosuke Aizen to create Wang Jian as soon as possible. I hope you two are killed. Be killed. Looking at the disappearing silhouettes of Rifen Valley's Toshiro and Zuasian, Wuchen pleaded. Usually, these two were the most talkative and dissatisfied with his opinions. Now that they were dead, it was best. At this moment, in the first team's house, Captain Tianbei, looking at the person in front of him, it was the captain of the 3rd Division, Tianbei embroidered assistant. This man had bronzed black skin and looked very strong. He had a gentle and modest smile on his face. But Wuchen caught the hostility that sometimes floated and sometimes dormant in his eyes. Although his face was very gentle, it was just an appearance. Inside, he was a decisive person. Head captain. Tianbei embroidered assistant said respectfully. What's the matter? Wuchen sat down and asked faintly. This, Tianbei embroidered assistant made an embarrassed expression and immediately approached Dustless and said, I want to join. Suddenly, he paused. Then, he roared with killing intent, Sir Head Captain, in fact, what I want to say is, please die. Then, Tianbei embroidered assistant's expression was very fierce, and a cold light shot out from his waist. Because he was too close, he didn't even have time to react and directly pierced Dustless's head. Poochie. In an instant, his head fell to the ground. The head that fell to the ground was still in a daze, as if it hadn't realized what had happened. TSK, you are indeed a useless vase. You are the head captain at such a young age. There is no one else in Soul Society. Tianbei embroidered assistant saw that Dustless was instantly killed and said in an extremely bored tone. It's really boring. I thought I could have some fun, but who knew that this head captain is so weak? Tianbei embroidered assistant sighed and said with great disappointment. Then, he turned and left. I said, a low murmur spread out and said, I said that Aizen Sosuke hates the Grim Reaper very much. How could he let you come back? If I'm not wrong, you should have joined forces with him, right? No, I shouldn't say that you joined forces because that kind of ambitious person is extremely conceited. He will only treat everyone as a chess piece. You are not worthy of being his partner. Tianbei embroidered assistant trembled all over and instantly turned his head. A chopped-off head can talk. Looking at Dustless who fell to the ground and opened his mouth to speak, Tianbei embroidered assistant felt that his brain wasn't enough. She fell into a rare dead-end situation. Looking at you, it seems that you don't even know my ability. It seems that you are indeed Aizen Sosuke's chess piece. Aizen Sosuke clearly knows that I have the ability to be immune to physical attacks. He just sent you to die, idiot. Chapter 1170. The heavenly shell embroidered assistant's face darkened. She looked like she was about to bleed. She stared at the head on the ground, and her eyes were bloodshot. How on earth did you do it? The heavenly shell embroidered assistant asked in shock as she rolled her eyes. At this moment, Dustless's head had been separated from his body, but his head was still talking. Moreover, the most ridiculous thing was that Dustless's body, which had been beheaded, seemed to be fine. He was still standing on the spot, safe and sound. This is very simple. You just have to look at me from a different angle. Look at me as if you are looking at the death god. Sooner or later, you will be so shocked that you will go crazy. The head gradually weathered and turned into thousands of photons, which reconnected Dustless's body. When she saw such an unbelievable scene, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's mouth widened. Her jaw was almost dislocated. Don't look at you as if you are the death god. When she heard this, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant sneered. She was shocked by Dustless's arrogance. She sneered and mocked, "Are you saying that I should look at you as if you are a god and treat you as a god through and through?" The heavenly shell embroidered assistant's face was full of disdain. Even if he wanted to joke, there should be a limit. Isn't that so? What's wrong with that? Don't you think that this way, everything becomes reasonable? Dustless was not angry. He asked calmly, "Because you look at me as if I am an ordinary person, you will die a horrible death." A horrible death. Dustless was afraid that the heavenly shell embroidered assistant would not understand what he meant. Don't be arrogant, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. She stared at Dustless's cold face and realized that she was speechless. What Dustless said was the truth. There was no need to say anything. If she looked at him as if he was a god, everything would be reasonable. Because he was a god, he could not be killed. Even if his head was cut off, he could reattach it. Because he was a god, he had unlimited power. He had the power to collapse the sky and the earth with a flick of his finger. Because he was a god, he had unlimited spiritual pressure. Because he was a god, he could. She quietly stared at Dustless, who was approaching her. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth. "Sosuke Aizen, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost." The heavenly shell embroiderer gnashed his teeth and roared. He wanted nothing more than to tear Aizen Sosuke to shreds. It was because he had listened to Aizen Sosuke's slanderous words that he had fallen to such a state. He had been completely oblivious to the fact that he had set a trap for himself. Even though he had buried himself, the heavenly shell embroidery assistant still had not discovered it. "No, I can't give up. There's still a chance of winning." Stealing his heart, the heavenly shell embroidered helper chose to resist with all his might. He still had his own dreams. How could he die so hastily in a place like this? His eyes focused, and an enormous amount of spiritual pressure and lightning gathered in his right hand. Tao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon strikes the thief. Sky blue beams of light shot out, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. The void within 1,000 feet was dimmed, and the buildings of the First Division were forcibly demolished, turning into rubble. The light of a firefly, he calmly sized up the incoming light. It was several dozen feet wide, and the destructive fluctuations caused him to involuntarily retreat. His heart was filled with despair and haze. In front of this unstoppable light, it was as if everything was made of paper. The slightest touch would cause it to turn into ashes. The 88 Tao Breaker that I used with all my strength is extremely powerful. It's enough to instantly injure a division leader. Even if you take it, I think, boom. 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 A huge boom resounded through the sky. The white clouds in the sky were blown away and evaporated. The power was indeed strong. However, the strange thing was that the 88 Tao breaker, which should have exploded on the ground, suddenly flew up into the sky. Bastard, how is this possible? What kind of joke is this? He sent my Tao breaker flying with his bare hands? The heavenly shell-embroidered helper suppressed his saliva and exclaimed in shock. His tone was several times louder. Dustless had actually sent his Tao breaker flying with an exaggerated wave of his hand. How could he not be shocked? To be honest, I've never taken your level seriously. Even if it's Aizen Sosuke, I've always treated him as a nobody, Dustless said casually and calmly. Different realms meant different things. Perhaps the heavenly shell-embroidered helper was shocked and in disbelief, but Dustless was not happy at all. On the contrary, he was rather disappointed. With this move, he saw through the heavenly shell-embroidered helper's strength. He was also an opponent who was not strong enough but liked to be arrogant. In an instant, he lost his only interest. What exactly are you shocked about? Seeing the shock on the heavenly shell-embroidered helper's face, Dustless said calmly, the boring game ends here. Compared to this kind of boring battle, I prefer to go to the 4th division and have a pleasant after-dinner activity with Ray. The vast spiritual pressure that had been hibernating surged, and the violent airwaves caused the earth to tremble. Suddenly, the heavenly shell-embroidered helper felt that the surroundings were abnormally hot. He muttered to himself absent-mindedly, such a big formation, could it be the legendary 96 Tao breaker, cremation with one sword, 96 Tao breaker? Are you talking about cremation with one sword? No. It's not worth using that to deal with you. A small character like you can be dealt with in an instant with a 90 Tao breaker. Dustless pointed at the heavenly shell-embroidered helper as he spoke with unusual seriousness. Countless cold black lights appeared slowly and swarmed toward the heavenly shell-embroidered helper from all directions. Tao breaker 90. Black coffin. As soon as he finished speaking, it was as if he was playing the soul-calming song of the apocalypse. The world before the heavenly shell-embroidered helper's eyes turned black. He vaguely saw the evil spirits of the underworld waving at him. Then, he suddenly felt an incomparable stabbing pain. Pft! 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 Countless black lights pierced through the heavenly shell-embroidered helper's body, shattering it completely. His flesh and blood flew everywhere as he was brutally dismembered. Even without singing, the power was beyond imagination. It was several times stronger than Aizen Sosuke's full singing. Chapter 1171. His overwhelming strength could be said to be invincible. Even the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant and his pride were crushed together. His body was covered with hideous bloody wounds, and his crushed bones were exposed to the air. White liquid seeped out from the crushed bones, and the air was filled with a thick smell of blood. This pungent smell made one feel uncomfortable just by smelling it. He seems to be completely dead. Glancing at the corpse of the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant, Dustless turned around and left. His footsteps were very light. After being crushed and obliterated by number 90 Tao breaker, it was very difficult to survive. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a sharp whistling sound came from behind, and Dustless, who realized the danger, turned sideways. Poochie. Even though his speed was very fast, one of Dustless's arms was mercilessly cut off by the blade wind. You're not dead? Staring at the unscathed heavenly shell-embroidered assistant, Dustless wondered in his heart, this guy was clearly torn apart by the black coffin, but now he has come back to life. The spiritual pressure in his body seems to have increased several times. After looking at the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant for a long time, Dustless came to a shocking conclusion. His spiritual pressure had been absorbed. Bastard, I was too careless. I forgot that this guy seems to be able to absorb the enemy's spiritual pressure and transform it for his own use. I'm afraid that the spiritual pressure I just released from the black coffin was all absorbed by this guy, so his spiritual pressure has become stronger. The Yao Yao blade can absorb the enemy's spiritual pressure. Feeling the surging spiritual pressure in his body, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant was very confident. He didn't expect Dustless's spiritual pressure to be so terrifying. Just a casual Tao breaker consumed spiritual pressure comparable to that of a captain-level Shinigami. This was also one of the reasons why Dustless's Kido was so powerful. Under the endless infusion of spiritual pressure, any move would undergo a tremendous change. The power of the number 90 Tao breaker Black Coffin was the same. Now our identities seem to have changed. I have changed from the prey to the hunter. With a smile on his face, he immediately slashed at Dustless with his Zanpakuto. Especially after seeing the arm that fell on the ground, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's confidence soared. If a person lost an arm, his combat power would inevitably be greatly reduced. Idiot, you came at the right time. Do you think you can win like this? You're still going to die, idiot. Dustless's mouth was full of mockery. He did not care about something like an arm. He could grow another one at any time, and it would not affect him at all. Thinking that victory was within his grasp was just the wishful thinking of the heavenly shell embroidery. The severed arm emitted a faint luster, overflowing with a milky white mysterious liquid. It looked quite mysterious. It was just a short gap of a breath, and a brand new arm grew out. This unimaginable speed caused the heavenly shell embroidered assistant to jump in fright, but she still decisively gritted her teeth and charged explosively towards Dustless. Since he couldn't escape the fate of death even if he tried to escape, then he would rather die in battle. Swish! Swish! The long saber swept over, aiming for the vitals. It was specially chosen to sweep at tricky spots. When the attack was vicious, an ordinary person's head would probably be directly chopped off. The swordsmanship was unprecedentedly tricky, and there was no way to dodge it. Bring it on. Seeing that there was no chance for him to escape, Dustless simply gave up on the idea of temporarily taking shelter. He said in an extremely provocative manner, "You're just a lackey. Dog Rock is your true home. I was blind to have made you the captain. How hateful. You're courting death." Hearing this, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant trembled with anger. Her rough and weather-beaten old face turned green. After Dustless's interference, the perfect swordsmanship was instantly full of flaws. Her entire body was full of holes. Once a person's mind was in a mess, they would definitely be distracted. At the same time, it also meant that this person was about to walk into the abyss of the netherworld. After all, not everyone was carved from the same mold as Dustless, who had countless life-saving methods and the ability to regenerate without limit. The small foot that carried a flash of absolute heavy blow rose from the ground. Due to the terrifying temperature of the light, it directly melted the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's skin. Ah! It hurts. Bastard! The miserable cries and howls made one tremble with fear. Those heart-wrenching screams made it seem as if she regretted living in this world and wished she was dead. Light speed kick. The merciless light revealed itself on the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's chest and blasted him back mercilessly. After an explosion, he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Boom boom boom. The huge tremors attracted the attention of the Soul Society's captains. They looked at the blazing fireballs in the void in disbelief and rushed over without stopping to rest. It was one thing for the head captain to fly into a rage, but he could not drag his own people into this. That kind of indiscriminate attack would either kill or injure those who came into contact with it. Everyone understood the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's pain. Sometimes, living was definitely more painful than dying. If I can kill an idiot like you once, I can kill you twice, 3 times, 4 times. I can even kill you 1,000 times. Dustless spoke softly. His casual tone was filled with indifference and confidence. He had never taken an insignificant person like the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant seriously. A grain of sand would always be sand. It was impossible for it to evolve just because of a momentary dazzle. This was unrealistic and impossible. Colorful divine rainbows bloomed in unison in the void. They all had the same destination, which was where Wu Chen was. After all, he was now the leader of Soul Society and the personally appointed head captain of Team Zero. He had the absolute right to speak. Chapter 1172. At the same time, there was a huge change in another direction. The entire city was turned into ruins. Damn it, why are there so many of them? We don't have enough manpower. The humans in the modern realm are about to be wiped out by the Great Voids. We need to ask for reinforcements from Soul Society. Otherwise, the entire human race will be wiped out by the hateful Jillian sooner or later. Kungzucho, Kurosaki Ichigo, Higashiya Toshiro, and Sakumura Seizen were standing close to each other. They were surrounded by countless great voids. Jillian was rushing towards them in the dark. The Shinigami brought by Saojin and Higashi were almost completely wiped out. They all screamed unwillingly, and finally fell powerlessly in the burning ruins of the city. In the war, the first to be unlucky were the ordinary people at the bottom. I've already sent a message to Soul Society before. Most of the Killian have appeared. Why are only the two of you here? The number of Shinigami you brought is also very average. We are now being besieged. Kurosaki Ichigo shouted loudly. His tone was hysterical. This is the arrangement of the head captain. Higashiya Toshiro's green eyes flashed with a touch of gloominess, and immediately comforted Kurosaki Ichigo and Sajin. Soul Society's reinforcements may be close at hand. We just need to hold on for a while. These words were naturally to fool Kurosaki Ichigo and Saojin. Dustless deliberately did this to create a favorable time for Aizen to create Wang Jian, then he can go to Soul King Palace to devour the Soul King. We can only hold on for now. Kurosaki Ichigo could only sigh in frustration. Now that things have reached this point, they could only wait for the reinforcements. Although he knew he might be fooled, Kurosaki Ichigo chose to wait. The hope was slim, but it was better than nothing. At least it gave him the motivation to hold on. Kakaka. It was also at this moment that a huge hole suddenly appeared in the void, and a group of great voids that were clearly different from Jillian walked out. They were all wearing white uniforms, and it was clear that they all came from the same force. That is, Higashi Shiro and Sakumura Sakura raised their heads and looked over. After recognizing who it was, their expressions changed drastically. They were shocked to find that these people were all Ajuchas. In the past, they could still fight against Ajuchas. However, they had all been tricked by Dustless. Whether or not they could survive was a problem. It was also at this moment that a burst of light suddenly appeared in the depths of the sky. The reinforcements they had been waiting for had finally arrived. However, the person who walked out of the realm gate caused them to be directly petrified. This person wore heavy makeup and a dazzling golden hair ornament on her forehead. Her exquisite and translucent face was absolutely beautiful, as if she was deliberately carved by the heavens. That bastard has only been the head captain for a few days and he's already made such a big mess. Looking at the pitiful Kungzucho below, the graceful beauty complained in dissatisfaction. She waved her hand lightly, and the great void realm experts that were surrounding Shinozaki Ichigo and the others collapsed one after another. They turned into a group of dregs and disappeared with the wind. The woman with the hair ornament on her head and an enchanting yet cold appearance was not ordinary. She was one of the members of the Zero Squad, Shoutoro Senjumaru. The Zero Squad existed in the Spirit King Palace. Originally, this kind of instigation was left to the Godii 13. However, the commotion this time was too big, so the Zero Squad had no choice but to step in. Where's Dustless? Landing gracefully on the ground, Shoutoro Senjumaru looked at the three of them and asked suspiciously, "Did that guy send you guys here?" Higashi Shiro and Sakumura Sakura looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Due to the appearance of the Zero Squad in Quiet Soul Society last time, the two of them also knew about the existence of this special organization. The Shinigami that we brought were all annihilated. The number of Jillian is as many as snow. Captain Sakumura and I are the captains. As for Shinozaki Ichigo. Sigh. Higashi Shiro was young and tender, but his tone was very mature and experienced. Hearing this, Shoutoro Senjumaru's eyes lit up. He grasped the important part and asked, in other words, that guy Dustless ordered the two of you to come and reinforce the modern world? Yes. Sajin and Higashiya Toshiro answered honestly, telling the truth of the matter to Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru without missing a single detail. Ah, the greater voids who heard the news roared. Although these Jillian had no will and intelligence, their strength was still not bad. Only the vice-captain level Shinigami could be relied on to fight against them. Humph, mere ants, how dare you be so arrogant? Shoutoro Senjumaru turned his head and said coldly. His whole body was filled with cold murderous intent. Looking at the tragic situation in the modern world, his murderous intent increased. With a wave of his hand, countless needles that looked like sewing appeared. Pay with your lives for the Shinigami that died in battle and the humans in the modern world. As he spoke, the Jillian that came attacking were easily crushed by Shoutoro Senjumaru. It was as easy as blowing dust. It was not worth mentioning. In fact, it was indeed so. In the eyes of the Zero Squad, even the vice-captain level Shinigami were not enough, let alone these insignificant Jillian. They were just there to fill the gaps between their teeth. Chapter 1173. Inside the Soul Society, the sky was clear and cloudless. Damn it. Why is it like this? How can such a young captain be so strong? Damn it, the intelligence said that he has only been a Shinigami for a few decades. The heavenly shell-embroidered assistant Zanpakuto was inserted into the ground. She endured the stinging pain all over her body and supported her body. She stared at Dustless, who was coming towards her with difficulty. With every step he took, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's heart was one step closer to the abyss. He smelled a special will from Dustless. This guy was just using me to pass time. He never cared about me at all. The heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's face turned green. In the end, she came to this shocking conclusion. Even though the strength that Dustless had displayed now definitely surpassed that of the dimension where the death god was, there was an inexplicable voice in her heart that told the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant that this was definitely not his full strength. When he mentioned Dustless, Sosuke Aizen showed a complicated expression. It was complicated with unwillingness, mixed with fear, hatred, and admiration. Obviously, Sosuke Aizen knew that he was not as good as Dustless, not just in terms of strength, but in all aspects. What should I do? Seeing Dustless's figure gradually approaching, the heavenly shell embroiderer's imagination ran wild. He thought about countermeasures. It seemed that a strong resistance would only be ruthlessly crushed and eliminated. Dustless would mercilessly sweep him into the trash heap of history. Ah. Are you going to give up? Dustless, who was good at observing people, laughed. There was a trace of pity in his words. I haven't played enough yet, and you're going to die. Facing an absolute existence like you, anyone would give up. Futile resistance is futile. It's better to give up and lose with dignity. The heavenly shell embroiderer admitted frankly. He knew that the other party had the strength to destroy the world, and he knew that he was no match for him, but he still insisted on challenging him. In the heavenly shell embroiderer's eyes, he was an idiot. How about cooperating once? Looking at Dustless, the heavenly shell embroiderer restrained his killing intent and suggested very kindly. He couldn't beat him, and he couldn't run away. In this case, he could only lower himself and beg for mercy. Cooperation? Do you have the capital to cooperate with me? Dustless neither agreed nor refused. Instead, he directly said, putting aside the factor of strength, do you think you have any information that would interest me? Hearing this, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant froze, and large beads of sweat dripped from her forehead. I have. Opening his mouth, he was shocked to find that he didn't have a bargaining chip that could move Dustless. Not to mention bait, he didn't even have the qualifications to move Dustless. He had no right to negotiate at all. Sir Head Captain. The people from Soul Society, who had rushed over, glared at the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant with indignation. They could not help but curse, you despicable villain. The head captain is indebted to you. He gave you a heavy responsibility and handed the 3rd division to you. Is this how you repay his kindness? How shameless. Shiomu Rukia's delicate little face surged with anger. She unsheathed her zanpakuto, and in anger, she slashed straight at the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant. Seeing this, Dustless frowned and ordered, "Lucia, stop for me. You're not his match." Hee. Seeing this, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's eyes glowed with green light, and a touch of coldness and cunning flashed in her eyes. This was an opportunity. Clang, clang, clang. Waving her zanpakuto catch Rukia's series of awe-inspiring attacks, her left arm emitted a small scale of ryatsu, and at the same time, she waved her zanpakuto to force Rukia back. Binding path number 61, 6-rod light prison. 6 huge light belts swept over and easily bound Rukia. Seeing this, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant hurriedly stepped forward and blocked Rukia's throat with her zanpakuto. "Idiot, you are too arrogant. With your strength, you are still far from being able to resist a captain-level Grim Reaper." Smacking her lips, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's face was full of disdain and contempt. She shouted loudly, "Get out of my way, or I will immediately kill this Grim Reaper called Rukia. Let her go before I get angry." Dustless's tone had obviously changed. It was a little hoarse, a little indifferent, and even more violent and boiling with killing intent. "Let her go?" Hearing this, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant glanced at Rukia and shook her head decisively, saying, "She is now the guarantee of my life. If I let her go, I will definitely die. You think you won't die if you don't let her go? Let her go if you know what's good for you, and I can leave your corpse intact. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences." Dustless said coldly, his eyes already glowing red. "Is that so?" Hearing this, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant remained unmoved. Her indifferent tone left no room for negotiation. "Get out of my way, or I will immediately kill this little girl. Don't test my bottom line. A person who is forced into a desperate situation can do anything." The heavenly shell-embroidered assistant gritted her teeth and warned. Her zanpakuto was already close to Rukia, and there were obvious bloodstains on Rukia's neck. Heavenly hand power. The discussion was fruitless. Dustless directly activated the ability of Rinnegan, and his body suddenly disappeared. Such an exaggerated scene made everyone's eyes widen. Where did he go? Seeing Dustless suddenly and strangely disappear, the nervous heavenly shell-embroidered assistant muttered to herself in amazement. At the same time, she looked left and right, looking for traces of Dustless. His other hand quietly grasped Shiomu Rukia's beautiful hair. After all, this was his current life-saving trump card. "Behind you, idiot." As his voice fell, the wind from the blade passed through the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's body and directly cut her in half. Even because of the excessive blood and speed, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's heart was still beating. Chapter 1174. The power of the heavenly hand came and went without a trace. It belonged to the space series of ninjutsu. The tragic death of the heavenly shell embroiderer was inevitable. After all, the strength of both sides was there. Burying you in the ground will pollute the land, so, it's better for you to vanish. Staring coldly at the heavenly shell embroiderer who was split into two, Dustless's palm overflowed with pink light and covered his body. A burning smell spread. Heido 54, Flame Destruction. As his voice fell, the disk of flame shot out from his hand. In a flash, it approached the heavenly shell embroiderer's body and burned his body into ashes. Boom, boom, boom. There was an explosion. He thought that the heavenly shell embroiderer's body would be burned into ashes. Who would have thought that this guy would come back to life again? No wonder you became Aizen Sosuke's subordinate for no reason. You also accepted the power of the Hogyoku. No wonder it's so difficult to kill. Dustless was relieved. Following his gaze, the heavenly shell embroiderer was strangely healing. There's no other way. If possible, I don't want to have anything to do with a filthy creature like the Void. This is completely prepared to deal with you. It's very useful. If it weren't for the power of the Hogyoku, I would have been killed by you. The heavenly shell embroiderer spat out blood as he spoke with difficulty. White liquid spurted out from his face and then slowly shrank, turning into a mask that belonged to the void. Is that so? The power of the Hogyoku is indeed powerful. Dustless nodded in agreement. As the host of the Hogyoku, he knew best. But then he changed the topic and smiled eerily. The Hogyoku has consciousness, but I erased it later. The consciousness in the Hogyoku now is actually disguised by me. Hearing this, the heavenly shell embroiderer was stunned. His expression changed and he asked anxiously, "What did you say?" He. The person who instigated Aizen Sosuke to kill the head captain is me. I'm afraid that idiot Aizen Sosuke will never know that the person who took the head captain's Ryujin Jaka is actually me. Close to the heavenly shell embroiderer, Dustless said in a tone that only the two of them could hear. In other words, the power in my body right now is yours? The heavenly shell embroidered assistant was stunned for a moment before she asked with a trembling voice in disbelief. TSK. You're smart. I know your every move like the back of my hand. Dustless admitted with a chuckle. This was an indisputable fact. Soon after, he sneered, "You have my power in your body, yet you still dare to point your sword at me. Do you know how terrifying that is?" Ah! A miserable scream suddenly came out of the heavenly shell embroidery assistant's mouth. Immediately after, his body swelled up, and countless blood vessels spread out from all parts of his body. The spiritual pressure in his body started to go berserk. "You will explode from my spiritual pressure." Dustless spoke in a hoarse voice as his eyes shot out red light. Every word he said seemed to be filled with supreme command and control. The heavenly shell embroidered assistant's body started to swell. "You think I gave the Hogyoku to Sosuke Aizen? Don't be naive. Those who have received the power of the Hogyoku indirectly have my spiritual pressure in their bodies. Don't forget that the original owner of the Hogyoku is me. One day, when I feel that they are useless, all of you will die. In fact, the power of the Hogyoku is an out-and-out trap. This is also what I designed by imitating Yawacha's Holy Spirit." Dustless muttered to himself. At the same time, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's face was full of unwillingness. He locked his gaze on Dustless and wished he could drag him into hell with him. He had been unhindered for a lifetime, but he was blown up by someone else's power. How ironic. Bang bang bang. In the end, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant could not withstand the power of the Hogyoku. His body, which had swelled up like a balloon, exploded and turned into a boundless blood mist. There was no corpse left. A rain of blood floated in the sky. It's finally over. A faint golden luster floated out of his body and pushed the blood away. Dustless left safely with his hands in front of him. The heavenly shell embroidered assistant had completely become history. Inside the First Division's team house. What, it was suppressed? Dustless looked at Matsumoto Ranjaku in shock. He snatched the information in her hand and read it carefully. After a while, his brows were tightly knitted together. That group of Zero Division likes to meddle in other people's business? The information in Dustless's hand was about the situation in the modern world. It was obtained from the 12th Division. The Great Void in Kangzucho had been suppressed by the Shiradora Thousand Hands Maru and Sajin. It was as good as new. I was counting on Aizen Sosuke to create a Wang Jian for me to invade the Soul King Palace. Now it seems unrealistic. Dustless's expression darkened. If it was not for the fact that Aizen Sosuke was still useful, he would have rushed to Hueco Mundo to kill him. He thought that Aizen Sosuke would be able to create a Wang Jian in a few days. Who would have thought that the Shiradora Thousand Hands Maru would come out of nowhere and destroy his plan? Isn't this a good thing? The Great Void has been wiped out. The Grim Reaper has won. Matsumoto Ranjaku puffed up her breasts and expressed her confusion. Women with big breasts have no brains. This sentence is really true. Dustless sighed in his heart. He lazily lay on the couch and gently closed his eyes. He was secretly thinking of countermeasures. Suddenly, he realized that he had no way to break into the Soul King Palace. Since soft methods won't work, I can only use hard methods. A dazzling cold light flashed in Dustless's eyes. Suddenly, the delicate figure of Shirodora Thousand Hands Maru appeared in his mind. The Zero Division's bodies were all made of Soul King's power. He could only start with her. It was good that Shirodora Thousand Hands Maru was tactful. Dustless did not want to fight her. If she resisted, he could only use brute force to suppress her. Chapter 1175. With the addition of Team Zero, the turmoil in the modern world was stopped. Dustless's plan to use Sosuke Aizen to create Wang Jian also collapsed. There were only two ways to enter the Spirit King Palace. One was to follow Team Zero, and the other was to use Wang Jian. Other than that, Dustless couldn't think of any other strategy. In the First Division's building, looking at the picturesque scenery of Soul Society in the distance, Dustless muttered alone. Team Zero's body is constructed by the power of the Spirit King. In this world, only they can enter and leave the Spirit King Palace at will. Others can't even find a trace of them, let alone invade the Spirit King Palace. Dustless sighed. He was now facing such an awkward situation. Originally, he was counting on Sosuke Aizen, but who would have thought that Shuro Senjumaru would crush Dustless's idea? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the deserted First Division's building, a faint ripple splashed in the air. Dustless turned his head and saw a young woman standing elegantly and gracefully in the First Division's building. The elegant and extraordinarily beautiful young woman was slender and elegant. Her pink thin lips revealed a deep red sandalwood mouth. She said, "My respected captain, Kazucho was destroyed. Don't you think you should do something?" Senjumaru, taking a deep look at Shutoro Thousand Hand Maru, Wuchen handed over a cup of hot tea, which he rarely did. Staring at her delicate jade face, there was a lot of expectation in his eyes. You have something to say?" Being stared at by Dustless, Shuro Senjumaru's face blushed. Being stared at by a man, she felt uncomfortable. An indescribable flame was rising rapidly. "What do you think of me?" Dustless changed the topic and asked inexplicably. "Your impression?" Stunned by this sudden question, Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru even forgot about his purpose of coming here. He tilted his head and pondered for a long time. His feelings toward Dustless were rather contradictory and complicated. In short, it was a love and hate relationship. In the past, she was tricked by Dustless and was inexplicably seen naked by him. Naturally, Shidoro Kienshimuru was furious. Other than that, Dustless had temporarily surrendered to the Grim Reaper. This was something that made her happy. "You're full of evil tricks. Of course I hate you." "Really?" Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with a touch of strange color. His Sharingan bloomed with a strange afterglow as he focused his sight on Shidoro's body. "What do you want?" Seeing this, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru sensed danger. He looked at Wuchen cautiously and warned, "This is Soul Society. Don't forget that you still have a meritorious service to atone for your crimes. In addition, Squad Zero has placed many dangerous seals on you. If you dare to act rashly, I can do it at any time. Divine Might." Not waiting for Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru to finish speaking, a giant whirlpool swallowed her up, including Dustless. In the mysterious space, there was a dead silence. There was not the slightest life. What is this place? Genjutsu? Waves surged in his eyes that were as calm as autumn water, and Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru was on full alert. "This is the space of divine might, and it is also my private space." A faint voice came. Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru subconsciously looked at the source. It was Dustless. "Private space? Your ability?" Hearing this, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru's pretty face was slightly silent. She stared at Dustless unkindly. You have countless abilities. So far, you have shown dozens of abilities. So many? Dustless's frozen face loosened and said in surprise, Did Squad Zero count my abilities? I'm honored, but all of this is not important. This is my space. If you want to get out of here, there are only 2 ways. 2? No, it should be 3. Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru sneered, If I kill you, it should be one of the ways. If you think you can kill me, you can try. Looking at Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru, the calm Dustless didn't care. If she could kill him, she would have done it long ago. You bastard. Hearing this, Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's pretty face turned cold. When she was about to make her move, Dustless's voice stopped her invincible attack. I can let you out, but you have to bring me to Spirit King Palace immediately. Dustless said softly, I will replace Spirit King and become the supreme leader of Shinigami. Then you might as well kill me. Without thinking, Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru directly rejected Dustless's condition. Then there is only one condition left. Looking deeply at Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru, Dustless said bluntly, Then you will completely become my person. Only in this way can I guarantee that you won't betray me after I let you out. You dirty and shameless villain, don't forget that you are the head captain. Pointing at Dustless angrily, Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's face turned ashen. She knew the meaning of Dustless's words. What did he mean by completely becoming Dustless's person? It meant that she had to give him everything, including her heart. The difference between a smart person and an idiot is self-awareness. If you think you are my opponent, you can give it a try. But I can tell you for sure that once you choose to make a move, I will definitely use force to take everything from you without any hesitation. Don't blame me for being cold, you can only blame yourself for sticking to the rules. Moreover, it will be better for you to become my person than now. Dustless had an expression of, I'm thinking for your sake. Obviously, he was saying that it was her fortune to have taken a fancy to her. Chapter 1176. Shuro Thousand-Hand Maru was sweating profusely as she stared at Dustless, who was close to her. She didn't doubt his means at all. He was very cunning and his character was extremely strange. Regarding Wu Chen, she more or less harbored complicated thoughts. Don't go astray. I can treat it as if nothing happened. Taking a deep breath, Shuro Thousand-Hand Maru could only take a step back and said, If you are willing to give up this action, I can let bygones be bygones. Let bygones be bygones? Hearing this, the corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled up even more. He said bluntly, You don't seem to understand the situation. Now, you are already a fish on the chopping board, and the person who is about to slaughter you is me. Seeing that Shuro Thousand-Hand Maru was deliberately beating around the bush, Dustless also covered it up and spoke frankly. I can tell you clearly that no matter how you resist, you only have 2 choices. You can either take me to the Spirit King Palace or let me occupy every corner of your body. Dustless was stubborn and forced Shuro Thousand-Hand Maru into a corner. You bastard. You don't know what's good for you. Shuro Thousand-Hand Maru was furious and her eyes changed rapidly. She was thinking of a way to deal with Dustless. She felt a headache coming on to this Dustless who was not afraid of boiling water. Shuro Thousand-Hand Maru only felt that Vasto Lord was much cuter than this rascal. Oh right. Just at this moment, an idea suddenly flashed through Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's mind. A stratagem was instantly formed. He looked at Dustless with a smile. What's wrong with this woman? Why did she suddenly change her personality? It shouldn't be possible. Dustless pondered and frowned. He was guessing what Shuro Thousand-Hand Maru's purpose was. This woman was scheming and unreliable. It was impossible for her to surrender so easily. He immediately raised his guard. Oh. Didn't you want me? Are you afraid now? Looking at Dustless who was hesitating, Shuro Thousand-Hand Maru smiled and teased him. Afraid of you? Because Dustless was a little taller, he looked down at Shidoro Senju Maru and said loudly, I'm not afraid of Uraba or Yamamoto. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Why did they retreat? Her beautiful eyes were filled with doubt as she asked in astonishment. Remove the skeletal arms behind you. Dustless raised his voice and said firmly. When he was doing that kind of thing, there were a few skeletal arms waving behind his back. Just thinking about it made him feel disgusted. I see. No problem. Shidoro Senjumaru raised her eyebrows slightly. Soon after, under Wuchen's surprised gaze, she took off her captain's haori in broad daylight, revealing a seductive body that could make people's blood vessels spurt out. Her skin was as white as snow with a tinge of red. Every inch of her skin was extremely plain and smooth. In any case, he was fine. Chapter 1177. Shidoro Senjumaru was extremely furious. If Dustless lowered his head and admitted his mistake, or lowered his attitude, she wouldn't mind letting him live. After all, he could be considered as an ally in the past. However, Dustless's disdainful gaze had deeply hurt her. Since you want to die so much, this concubine will fulfill your wish. With a cold expression, Shidoro Senjumaru waved her hand lightly. The ultimate clothes that wrapped around Dustless started to roll around rapidly like a swarm of insects. PFFF. Countless spikes appeared out of nowhere. There were thousands of them, and it was impossible to guard against them. With just a few simple moves, they pierced through Dustless's body. Blood flowed out from his body like a funnel. Dustless's body was covered with dozens of thumb-sized wounds. His flesh was badly mutilated. Cough, cough, cough. You are really ruthless. I thought that even if you wanted to kill me, you wouldn't be so ruthless. Dustless, who was about to die, was out of breath. He was filled with a deep sense of powerlessness. You are the one who asked for it. Shidoro Senjumaru said indifferently. She quietly observed Dustless, whose heart was slowly stopping. A complicated expression flashed past the corner of her eyes. Soon after, she looked at this boundless unfamiliar world and muttered to herself, strange, he has already died completely. Why is the trick in this world still not dispelled? That is because I am not dead yet. A gust of chilly wind blew over. Dustless, who had a playful expression, appeared once again. With his powerful strength, he pressed Shidoro Senjumaru, who was caught off guard, to the ground. Bang! Dustless, who was brutally killed, actually turned into a block of wood. How is it possible that he is not dead yet? What kind of sorcery is this? Shidoro Senjumaru's expression changed as he panicked. His entire body felt cold. Only now did he realize that his clothes were not enough to cover his body. Hurry up and get out of my way, it hurts. Dustless's hands had the strength of 10,000 caddies. He grabbed Shidoro Senjumaru's snow-white wrist until it turned red. You still dare to say that it hurts? You killed me mercilessly just now. What is wrong with me taking revenge on you? Dustless did not reduce his strength. His tone was filled with coldness. His face was expressionless. You, opening his mouth, Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru was speechless, and his pretty face lost its luster. Poochie. Dustless's spiritual pressure leaked out. He tore his clothes apart, revealing his robust body. His muscles were extremely well-proportioned and filled with explosive power. What do you want? Shidoro Senjumaru's tone was obviously filled with fear and panic. Two naked people gathered in an environment where there was no one around. It could be imagined what terrible things would happen. I've already said that the price of resisting me is this cruel. Since you insist on not listening, now is the time for you to pay the price. Poochie. An intense piercing pain spread throughout her body. She felt as if her entire body was about to be torn apart. Her entire body was bleeding, and her jade-like face became incomparably pale. It wasn't that Wu Chen was unreasonable. If he wanted to tame a woman, this method was the most effective and direct. Especially for a prideful woman like Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru, it was the most suitable method to use on her. The most primitive ambition of humans was shameless. Dustless transformed into a ferocious beast and ruthlessly ravaged Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru. She was an ice beauty with an arrogant personality. As a member of Squad Zero, she was used to being arrogant. If he didn't teach her an unforgettable lesson, the chances of taming her was zero. Is there any use for you to look at me like I killed your father? In the world I lived in, there was a saying that life is like rape. Since you can't resist, then relax and enjoy it. Dustless pinched Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's face. Her snow-white face could freeze one's fingers. Even the moment one touched her skin, one's fingers would be encased in a layer of ice. He couldn't help but feel that his life was bitter. While working hard, he still had to understand the pain of the ice. I'll just treat it as being bitten by a dog. You can do whatever you want. Resisting Dustless's attack, Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru tried hard to make an indifferent expression. She was calm, but she obviously couldn't speak her mind. The beating of her slender eyelashes and the special feeling coming from her lower body made her infatuated. This kind of most primitive feeling of ecstasy made people unable to stop even if they wanted to. The tearing pain also disappeared completely. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru was shocked to discover that her body was uncontrollably catering to Dustless. This is the nature of living creatures. There's no need to resist. Dustless chuckled. His sight fell on the tear stains at the corner of Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's eyes. He couldn't help but sigh. He had no choice but to do this. A while ago, in order to think of a surprise attack on the Spirit King Palace, Dustless specially developed a ninjutsu. As long as a special space was implanted into the body of a member of Team Zero and integrated with their Spirit King power, they could ignore the difference in dimensions and forcibly break into the Spirit King Palace. Implanting a space inside the body was not an ordinary matter. Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru was not an ordinary person. As a member of Team Zero, her strength and power were infinitely close to perfection. Therefore, Dustless could only use this method. Don't glare at me with your teeth clenched. I swear I will not let you down in the future. Dustless once again promised. Women were always used to be coaxed and deceived. But I will definitely kill you. And I will use Zanpakuto to cut your body into countless pieces. After I dip it in syrup, it will release the devouring power of ants. Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru said with hatred. Her eyes were red, and her tone had a rare crying tone. Dustless was silent. This matter was his fault. He forcibly took away her most precious thing in 1,000 years. Even with his thick-skinned and shameless personality, he was extremely embarrassed. He didn't dare to look at Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's eyes. He could only take advantage of her hatred to quietly transfer Ryatsu into Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's body and slowly integrate it with her Spirit King power. The future was still long, and the debts in the future could only be repaid slowly. Chapter 1178. In the sky above Seoul Society, a white light flashed across the blue sky, and 3 figures stepped out from it. Without exception, each of these figures looked dispirited and exhausted, as if they were patients who had just recovered from a serious illness, dispirited and listless. These 3 people were Sajin, Higashi Shiro, and Ichigo Kurosaki. You all look very sad. Go to the 4th Division first. I've already ordered them to prepare the treatment equipment in advance. We can immediately give you first aid. After a pleasant voice, Unohana Retsu appeared in a flash. The members of the 4th Division behind her all went to support the 3 people who could not even stand properly. Thank you, Captain Unohana. Ichigo Kurosaki and the others quickly thanked her and went to the 4th Division to receive treatment under the escort of the members of the 4th Division. They actually didn't die. Looks like Shinkuan miscalculated. Looking at the 3 people who were running away, Unohana Retsu's face was covered in frost. Her body was covered in a faint blood-red light. At this moment, she looked exceptionally terrifying. Her shocking degree of brutality was comparable to a peerless killing god. The surrounding air was filled with the smell of blood. Even the air that went deep into the lungs was mixed with the nauseating smell of blood. I'll kill you all on Shinkuan's behalf. In the Kamui space, the air was filled with a lewd smell that made people's minds wander. Looking down, the two white bodies were especially eye-catching. I will definitely not let you off so easily. Just you wait. Also, you better not mention a word about this to me. If anyone else knows about this, I'll definitely take you down with me. After tidying up his clothes, Shidoro Senjumaru was filled with killing intent. The cold light shooting out of his eyes was like thousands of blades. There's no need to hate me so much. After all, you're one of my people now. We should all work together. Helping me is the same as helping yourself, Senjumaru. Seeing Shidoro Senjumaru's expression of hatred and disgust, Dustless frowned and rubbed his temples, trying to relieve the pressure. Help you? What nonsense are you talking about? You want me to help someone who stole my most precious, the culprit who stole my virginity? Ridiculous. Don't even think about it. I will definitely kill you. Towards the end of his speech, Shidoro Senjumaru's hair stood on end. He was like a peerless devil, and his entire body was suffused with energy fluctuations that caused people to have a lingering fear. However, facing Dustless, she was unable to draw her sword against him. There was a huge gap between their strengths, and attacking him would only bring disgrace upon herself. That's your freedom. I can't control you. Even so, there are some things that I have to say. Regardless of whether you trust me or not, I have to solemnly tell you that I will be responsible for you. Dustless raised his head and muttered to himself. There was no trace of regret in his indomitable spirit. Are you sure you want to be responsible for me? Sensing the decisiveness and freedom in his tone, his cold and dusty heart is slightly touched. Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru says faintly, if you want to make up for the debt you owe me, that's fine too. Give me your... Dustless's body trembled when he heard that. The gaze of Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru was actually looking at his. I'm telling you, don't mess around. Uncontrollably shivering, Dustless was speechless. He didn't expect Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru to want his most important thing as a man. If it's possible, and you allow it, I'm very happy to cut it off. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru didn't hide anything and immediately said, I need your Jinzi to do an experiment and investigate your body, so you want to unlock the secret of my body. Dustless suddenly understood. He didn't care about this. He was afraid that this woman wanted to open up the seal to deal with him. Dustless was a real jubi. Even if it was successfully analyzed, it wouldn't have the slightest effect. Moreover, he had countless trump cards. You want to do an experiment? Sure. Dustless chuckled with a naughty smile on his face. But you can come and get it yourself. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru was stunned, then her lungs were about to explode. She angrily pointed at Dustless and scolded, you despicable villain, do you want me to solve it for you? Then do you want me to solve it myself? Dustless's eyes narrowed into a crescent moon, and the smile on his face was full of evil. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru hesitated. Looking at Dustless's sinister face, she could only stomp her feet. Unless she didn't want Dustless's Jinzi, she must solve this crucial problem at hand. You bastard, solve it yourself. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru, who couldn't put down her face, ordered with a black face. Sorry, my hands are congenital and can't do that kind of thing. Since you can't do it, then we can only stop here. I'll open the Shenwei space now. Let's go back. As he spoke, Dustless's pupils began to twist, and the space in the world of Shenwei had signs of gradually collapsing. Hold on. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru's eyelashes trembled, and she quickly stopped him. How could she let go of such a rare opportunity? In the end, she could only reluctantly say, sit still, if you dare to mess around with me. Don't blame me for being ruthless. I will definitely make you regret it for the rest of your life. Chapter 1179. Dustless's face was glowing. It was rare for him to obey someone else's order. He sat on the ground obediently and looked at Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru with anticipation, indicating that she could start. Using force and taking the initiative were always two different concepts. Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's face was red. She could explain Dustless using force before, but now she was taking the initiative to help Dustless. The concept was completely different. If other people know about this, I'll be struck by lightning and die a horrible death, cut into pieces. Dustless was speechless. He secretly sighed that Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru was smart but muddle-headed. Who would go out and talk about this kind of thing? Especially using force to take her was not a glorious thing, it was not worth showing off. That's for the best. Her white chin moved slightly. Recalling the huge thing that was rampaging in Dustless's body just now, Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru resisted the discomfort in her heart and grabbed it. Wait, you have to use your hands, you can't use your bony hands. Seeing the bony hand reaching over, Dustless cursed in his heart and shouted, if you can't do it, then you should just kill me. You have to use your hands. Impossible. Shaking her head like a wavy bone, Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru rejected Dustless's suggestion without even considering it. Then let's break up. Shrugging, Dustless stood up again. His pupils twisted and surging eye power shot out. The mysterious alternate space was about to collapse and disappear. Come here. Seeing this, Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's face changed and shouted, you better stop before you go too far. It's impossible to use my hands, change to another way. Another way? Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but be stunned. Staring at Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's pink cherry lips, he smiled and said, I see, you actually plan to use your mouth? Why didn't you say so earlier? This will work too. Bullsh *T. Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's delicate face darkened. She stared at Dustless and sneered, you better not threaten me, the consequences are definitely not something that you can bear. I didn't force you. You asked for it yourself. Dustless rolled his eyes and said as if it had nothing to do with him, in short, you can choose between your mouth and your hand. Give me an answer in 1 minute, or I will immediately remove the Shenwei world. Dustless kicked the ball to Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru. In the end, he closed his eyes peacefully and signaled her to choose whatever she wanted. I didn't expect her to value her chastity so much. She usually acts like she doesn't care about it, but in the end, she treats it as precious as her own life. Dustless secretly despised in his heart as he looked at Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru's solemn little face. About a minute later, he opened his clear eyes. 1 minute is up. What's your choice? He opened his mouth and said coldly, I can't promise you anything. Settle it with your own hands. I'm a handicapped person. Don't force me to do something I don't want. Dustless waved his hand and refused. At the same time, he activated his eye power again. The Shenwei world was gradually collapsing. After a few seconds, Dustless and Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru appeared in the outside world. Stop it. You win. I choose to use my own hands. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru's face turned red. She could only choose to compromise. She was so angry that she secretly gritted her teeth. She swore that when she developed new items in the future, she would not let Dustless go. TSK. In the end, you still agreed to my condition. Dustless sat on the ground and then lay down without moving. He rested his head on his arms and began to enjoy the next happy life. After all, she was one of the only 5 members of Team Zero. Just this identity alone was enough to make Dustless excited. Ouch, it hurts. You didn't do it on purpose, did you? You should be content. It's already a blessing that you didn't cut it off. Hurry up and cut it off between your fingers. I'm scared just looking at it. No, this is for my work. Is that so? Then I can only remove the Shenwei world. Let's go our separate ways. Wait, I promise you. For 4 hours, Dustless had been threatening Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru. In order to obtain Dustless's Jingzi, investigate his body structure, and develop new items to deal with Dustless, Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru was willing to pay any price. Her rationality was burned by the flames of revenge. She did not reject any of Dustless's threats. Dustless was also in pain and happy at the same time. It was not until close to 3 hours later that Dustless removed the Shenwei world. In contrast to the energetic Dustless, Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru was sweating profusely. Her face was pale, and her right arm was sore. After working for several hours, she felt like her right arm was going to fall off. Just you wait. I will not let this matter go. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru said coldly as she glared fiercely at Dustless. If it wasn't for the discomfort of her body, she might have already stood up with Dustless. Don't worry. It won't be long before we meet again. And the next time we meet, I reckon you won't even dare to lay your hands on me. Dustless ignored Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru's threat and smiled mysteriously. The next time we meet, either you die or I die. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru's face was filled with boiling killing intent. Her gaze locked onto Dustless's face for 2 to 3 seconds. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru dragged her tired body and slowly left. The next time we meet, I will change my identity. I won't speak to you as an equal as the head captain, but as a spirit king looking down on your Zero Squad. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.